Hello, my spookies. It's February, the month of love. But of course, love doesn't always take a traditional approach. That's just not how life works. Sometimes things get messy when it comes to matters of the heart and other internal organs. So tonight I'm presenting to you 7 of the most eerie, creepy, and messy stories about that little thing called love to get you ready for Valentine's Day next week. And don't worry, next week on Wednesday we have a brand new Valentine's Day novella just for you to listen to, so make sure you're subscribed. And on Valentine's Day itself next Friday, a compilation of some Valentine's Day stories to make sure you're in the mood. Make sure you're subscribed and get cozy, and let's fire it up. Love Conquers All by Joe Salmo. Brian, put your dick back in your pants, Derek said as the two stood alone under the stars. The acres of alfalfa surrounded them on Derek's dad's farm. We got some drinking to do, he finished and put his hand on Brian's shoulder. Brian, having emptied his bladder, quickly zipped up and followed Derek back to the little campfire they had in a small clearing in the fields where their friends, and more importantly, their dates, waited. Somehow he managed to get a date with Chelsea Hammer, and he was fully aware of her reputation, although it's been a few hours and she didn't seem all that promiscuous to him. Chad slammed a can of piss-warm beer into his chest as he cleared through the oats and alfalfa plants surrounding them. He smiled when Brian doubled over. "Thanks, asshole," Brian said through clenched teeth. He looked over at Chelsea to see she had noticed. She rolled her eyes at him. Great. Just great. "Becca, you need another beer?" Chad asked, and before she could answer, he tossed her one. She missed it and it landed on the fertile soil next to her. "Too slow, really bad reflexes," Chad said and laughed loudly. "Chad, maybe you should cool it, eh?" Derek said. "I'm usually the asshole here, and if I notice you are, how big of an asshole does that make you? Mind your own business, Dare. I noticed that you're the only one that didn't bring no pussy to bang," Chad said in a slur. Becca said in disgust. She stood up and crossed her arms. "I want to go home." "Oh, come on, babe. I didn't mean anything by it," Chad said and stumbled over to her, trying to plant a kiss on her cheek. She avoided the contact and Chad fell down on his face, crushing the smaller alfalfa plants mixed with the oats. "Chelsea, are you going to suck my dick tonight or what?" Brian asked her flat out. She had to know that's why he invited her out to Derek's family farm. "What? Absolutely not," Chelsea said, offended, and stood up. She grabbed the towel she had been sitting on that the boys provided them and covered her shoulders from the cold fall air. "Come on, Becca, I'll drive you home. This was a waste of time." "Come back," Chad called out after them, but they disappeared into the field in the night. "Man, what we need is girls that'll do what we want," Chad said. "That's slavery, jackass," Derek said, pouring his piss-warm beer on the fire pit to put it out. "Come on, night's over." "Come on, man, it's early yet. Not even like midnight," Chad complained. "I don't really feel like partying anymore. This night sucked," Brian chimed in. Derek picked up the plastic handle on the cooler without ice, and started to drag it down the path to the side road they'd made in his father's field so they could party out there, undisturbed. "I brought the cooler. Why did I have to bring the ice too? Don't let those bitches ruin our night, man. It's their loss anyway. You know what I'm packing in here?" Chad asked, grabbing his groin. "Bitch probably would have choked anyway." "From the stench? When's the last time you showered, man? You look like shit anyway," Derek retorted as they reached the road. All 3 of them watched as the girls drove off in Chelsea's dad's Dodge Ram. Chad flipped them off. "I knew I should have insisted that I drove. Then she wouldn't have been able to leave," Chad said. "To what end? Like, seriously," Brian said, unlocking the Corolla his parents got him for graduating last year. They told him he could use it to drive to college. They were so proud of him. All he'd done since was get drunk in fields and try to get laid. He wondered if they were still proud. He wasn't sure. Well, if they stayed with us and got to know us, Chad began. Let me cut you off there, Chad. The longer they were with us, the more they would have disliked us. There ain't nothing to like about us. Can't you see that? There ain't no girls around here that would give us the time of day, Derek said. Now go home so I can crawl into bed and rub one out before I pass out. What are we supposed to do then? Go into the city and get hookers and catch one of those veterinary diseases? Chad asked. Maybe we just conjure one up, Brian joked and shivered in the chill of the early November night air. Yeah, we can just dress a scarecrow up in women's clothes and take turns fucking her hay pussy, Chad said. Somehow it seems less demeaning than getting rejected by real girls all the time, Brian said. My dad catches us fucking one of his scarecrows and he'll beat my ass again, Derek shouted at them. Again? Chad and Brian asked at the same time. Well, not for the same thing, Derek replied. Sure, Chad said. But you might be onto something. I think they built a woman in that movie from the 80s. Why couldn't we do that? We don't have a computer, asshole, Brian chimed in as he got everything packed into the car. Can we go now? They got one down at the library. I can ask old Pete about it. He's the smartest person I know. If anyone would know how to do it, it'd be him, Chad said in a eureka moment. Brian dismissed him and climbed into the car. Let's go! The next night, 2 a.m, 0 hour. Time to finish and go to sleep, Derek thought as he held his phone in one hand and his dick in the other. He only dropped it twice on his face this time. They should make a headband that holds your phone for when you're watching porn, he thought, just as he finished into a dirty sock. He used the outside to wipe himself off a bit and tossed it onto the floor of his dirty room in a satisfied sigh. It only felt like a few seconds before there was a weird sound from outside. Perplexed, Derek rose out of bed and threw on a pair of sweatpants the dirty sock had landed on, ignoring the cold, wet spot. He made his way to a window looking towards the seemingly endless fields his dad maintained. What the fuck? He whispered and opened his window. Chad and Brian were standing there. Behind them was a wheelbarrow. And was that someone in it? He couldn't quite make it out in the dark. What are you guys doing here? Derek asked in an angry whisper. Waiting for you to finish, Chad replied. Took you long enough. How's your nose? You were watching me? Never mind. What do you want? Derek asked. Meet us out in the field. We'll explain it all, Chad said with a smile and grabbed the wooden handles on the wheelbarrow and took off into the field, leaving an obvious trail. This was why we always went in from the road. Plausible deniability, Derek thought as his gaze went from a bewildered Brian to his room as he looked around for some clothes to wear. You gonna follow him? In a second. I gotta shit. Mind if I come in? Brian asked. Don't wake my folks and hurry up. They met Chad in the clearing, waiting for them. He had a bunch of weird stuff laid out around them. What's all this? Derek asked. We gonna get laid tonight, Chad said. Brian agreed. Derek realized he could see his breath in the cold air and wished he'd brought a thicker jacket. The plants were going to die tonight in the frost. He watched as Chad kept checking his phone and looking around the clearing, like he was reading a recipe and making sure he had all the parts. He placed a single rose to the left of the wheelbarrow and a Black Swan DVD to the right. You want to explain how? Derek asked. Chad went to see old Pete at the library and he explained it all to him, apparently. They looked up the particulars online, but the printer was broke, so Chad had to type it all into his phone. Remember how that girl from Milford broke his camera when he tried to get a pic of her peeing over there? Brian explained as he pointed to the part of the field they all used to piss on nights like this. Yeah, I remember, Stacy or something like that, Derek said. Stacia. Anyway, he got it all down and now we can do it, Brian said excitedly. Do what exactly?
Shh, it was only the wind. You're safe. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Have a woman that'll want to have sex with us all the time, Chad chimed in. You see, it's real simple. Old Pete said that what you need to do is summon something that likes to have sex and whammo, there you go. You mean like a succubus? Derek asked. Oh no, Pete said that would be a mistake. He's done that before and it didn't end well at all. Did you know old Pete is only 32 years old? He looks 70. He said it was from a night with a succubus. He said to summon something nicer, like a love goddess, Chad said. And how do we do that? Derek asked, getting annoyed at Chad. Well, we looked into it and found this old Greek book about their mythology and shit. It had these rituals where you would offer things to the gods and they would come and accept the gifts. Old Pete says all the gods are real. They pop into reality as long as one person believes in them. Chad finished as he removed the body from the wheelbarrow and placed it into the center of the figure he had drawn in the soil around them. What is that? Derek asked. A vessel, Brian explained. Like a ship? No, like a host. The gods can't come to our world without a body to inhabit. I took one of your dad's old scarecrows from the cornfield over there, Chad said, pointing off into the distance. Guess we will be fucking a scarecrow after all, Brian said and laughed. You don't believe any of this shit, do you? Derek asked him. Brian always seemed like the most level-headed of them. If it works, great. If not, I had no better plans tonight anyway, his friend explained with a hint of sadness. And you're basing this all on what some old librarian told you? Derek asked them. Oh, Pete isn't a librarian. He lives behind the library, in the alley, Chad clarified. Sometimes he'll tell you about his crazy adventures for a 40. Crazy is right, Derek said. What do I have to do? So this can fail and I can go back to bed. I knew you'd be into it, Chad said and handed him a grocery bag full of fall-colored leaves. He pointed at the scarecrow. What am I doing with this? Derek wondered out loud. Stuff its bra, man. We want to give her big old titties, don't we? Chad said. Derek looked at Brian for a hint of reason to this night, but he just nodded his agreement, then made hand gestures of how big he would suggest. Shaking his head, Derek went over to the scarecrow and began to stuff its shirt. Is this makeup? Where did you get makeup to put on my father's scarecrow? Your mom's room, Chad said and laughed. Brian laughed too. Even Derek grinned a little bit at the lame your mom joke. Okay, I think everything is where old Pete told me to set it up. All I gotta do is read the passage and we should summon a love goddess to pleasure us, Chad explained. Remember to read it exactly as you wrote it down. Old Pete said that was the most important part. If we screw it up, we don't know what could happen, Brian said, adjusting the scarecrow a little bit to the left. I got it, Chad said. It's only a few sentences. I think I can handle it. From the depths of the other planes, from the space beyond mortal men, we call you forth with these gifts, symbols of your power and prowess. We bring you forth, mother of love, passion, and beauty. We ask that you bestow your attributes on us. With this, a slight pause, as Chad giggled. This alfalfa is scratchy, Brian said, pulling his leg away from the dying plant. In fact, all the plants around them were dying. It looks like a pale light was draining from them into the scarecrow. Come forth, Alfalfa-dite, Chad called out. A distant boom was heard, and Chad turned towards his friends. Shit. What did I just say? You fucked up the name, you idiot, Brian said. I meant Aphrodite. You're the one who mentioned alfalfa. So, What happens now? Brian asked. Think we're about to find out, Derek answered, as the scarecrow started to twitch on the ground. The face, a pumpkin with his mother's makeup on it, turned towards him. Its drawn-on mouth somehow became animated and opened into a womanly scream. They all backed up to the edge of the clearing as they watched the thing stand up awkwardly. The hay wound its way through the sleeves and formed arms and hands, slender, delicate hands, the hands of a woman. The round pumpkin turned its head toward Chad. A wicked smile crossed its painted-on facial features. A tongue licked around the lipstick that formed its mouth. It looked Chad up and down as it stepped towards him, seductively. Guys, I think it worked. Maybe not exactly as we planned it. He paused as he looked at the scarecrow love goddess approach him. I think we can make this work. Yeah, I got half a chub, Brian admitted and smiled nervously. You guys are fucking insane, Derek said. This thing is not what you told me it was going to be. I want no part of this. To be fair, you didn't want part of it before, Chad said as it approached him. It reached out a slender arm towards his waist, pointing its haystack-wrapped finger. Oh yeah, baby, I know what you want, Chad said, and unzipped his pants. He pulled out what he always bragged to them was a fine example of USDA grade A man meat, but was in reality a micro-penis. You would think it would take the scarecrow love goddess some talent to find it in the cold night, but it didn't. It didn't take it long at all to shoot a haystack straight up the hole in the micro-penis, and it must have pushed some air out of him elsewhere as he simultaneously farted and screamed, the latter being louder, but not by much. She's penetrating his piss hole, Brian said and tried to cross his legs while standing, which made him fall to the ground. That's some kinky shit I ain't into. Nobody's into that, Derek said and panicked. He definitely didn't want that for him. He grabbed the first thing he could find and charged toward the hay goddess of penis penetration. With a war cry that would make Vikings proud, he swung the object and struck it on the back. It had little to no effect, other than to get her attention. It was a boring movie anyway, he said and tossed the DVD to the ground. A rope of hay slipped from her other hand and wrapped around his throat, choking him. You brought me here into existence to play. Let's play, the creature said in a seductive tone. I'm going to have to admit that voice is bringing back my chub, Brian said, getting to his feet. If I see old Pete again, I'm going to punch that coot in the face, Chad said, pulling his hands away from his bloody groin. The distraction had made the goddess unpenetrate him. He panicked for a second, thinking she had ripped off what he had. But he sighed when he realized it was still there, just with a wider hole. Derek hobbled towards the goddess, who was holding Derek by the throat while digging in his jeans for something. Fuck this, I'm out of here, Brian said and turned to leave. But, with her free hand, a tentacle made of straw shot towards Brian, ripping a hole into the back of his Walmart jeans. He screamed out, wishing he had paid the extra for Levi's. They probably would have held up better. Either way, he didn't have to worry much longer as the straw tentacle made its exit through all the holes in his body at the same time, impressively impaling his eyeballs that twitched in the pale moonlight. It killed Brian. I would have bet he would be the one of us to survive something like this, Chad said, and stabbed his pocket knife into the pumpkin-headed hell bitch. She screamed out as pumpkin seed and pulp sprayed over Chad's face. It dropped Derek to the ground, who coughed and gasped for air. Oh shit, Chad said, backing away from it, grasping his micro-penis with two hands protectively. She circled him like a corn carnivore hunting its prey. He closed his eyes and fought back tears. All he wanted to do was get laid. He didn't want any of this shit. He felt the stalk touching his leg and working its way up him with a gentle touch. A womanly touch. You don't want to play with me anymore? the seductive voice asked, playfully.
I like it spooky. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
No, please, just go back. We didn't know what we were doing, Chad cried out as it circled behind him. Have you no desire to win my heart anymore? You created me in the ritual. You gave me a name, and therefore power. I was nothing until you named me Alfalfa Deity. What did you expect? A love goddess? You created me by mistake. I am a mistake. You wanted me to do whatever your heart desired, and now you have no desire for my heart. Chad whimpered. Derek stood up, leaning on the wheelbarrow, and looked at his friend. This can't be real. He's either having the weirdest wet dream of his life, or he took a ton of great drugs without knowing it. He rubbed his neck and cleared his throat. You don't want my heart. I refuse yours. The monster sent a straw tentacle through Chad's chest from behind, impaling his heart and shooting it out his chest towards his friend. The heart landed in Derek's hand as he was removing it from his throat. He shrieked when he realized what it was and dropped it to the ground, next to a can of hairspray that must have been part of the ritual. He grabbed for the can as his friend's lifeless body hit the cold earth just feet in front of him. Derek got to his knees and reached into his pocket, pulling out his bowl and lighter. He tossed the bowl down and faced the creature as it approached him in that sexy walk with stalks for heels. I don't want nothing from you, Derek called out. Leave me be! Derek, it was part of you that summoned me here. We have the strongest bond, she said as she pointed to a familiar object on the ground. His spank sock. God damn it, Brian. Take a shit my ass. He stole my spank sock. He raised the can of hairspray and held it up to his lighter. With a flick and a press, a fireball shot into the face of the scarecrow fuck buddy gone wrong and sent it reeling back with a scream. He stepped forward over the spank sock and sent another fireball into the scarecrow, this time aiming it at its flammable shirt and straw instead of its pumpkin face. Stop, the voluptuous voice called out to him. You don't understand. I had to get rid of them so that we could be alone. It was your magic that summoned me, she said, looking at the sock and trying to brush out the straw that was on fire. Magic? Derek asked, watching her every move. Years of your reproductive magic. The potency. It's very strong magic, she said, taking a step towards him. He noticed her leaves had burned away. No more breasts for her. No, this can't be. I don't want this. Chad did, Derek said. Do not reject me again, she said, and wrapped his leg with straw, pulling him to the ground. She mounted him. I will not be as gentle next time. Derek managed to get the can and lighter between the two of them and let loose with another blast, this one point blank. He felt the heat probably just as much as she did and screamed to match hers. He continued as long as he could until she got up from him. He rubbed his chest where he had been burned himself and found his shirt burned into his flesh. The creature wasn't doing much better as it ran around, now engulfed in flames. He ran towards it and planted the can of hairspray in its flat chest, burning his hand in the process, and backed away, wrapping his burned-up hand in his spank sock. Don't leave me. I was created so we would be together, she called to him, wrapping him in her smoldering straw tentacles. He turned to face her, a tear running down his cheek. He was going to die. There was no escape. Just then, the can of hairspray exploded, sending the torso flying in all directions. The pumpkin head fell to the ground, cracking open and spilling the insides onto the ground. The tentacles fell away from Derek, and he dropped to his knees, looking at the carnage. He heard something coming through the field towards him. Oh God! Could this be another one? How many more are there, he thought. A second later, his father entered the clearing with a shotgun in his hand. God damn it, Derek! I thought there was some hooligans out here fucking around. It's just you banging another scarecrow. I am gonna whoop your ass. Did you use your mother's makeup on that thing? Derek closed his eyes, wishing the thing had finished him off, like it did his friends.
Suspended by Rob Fields. It was just a week ago that Strickfield High School won the state football championship, beating out Strickfield Academy in what was a rather unusual game. Yeah, people are still talking about it. It was Greg Brandlake, the big hotshot quarterback of Strickfield Academy, who ended up transforming into a demon and trying to kill Strickfield High's Eddie Pee Wee Richter. As the demonic Brandlake was ready to kill Richter for winning the game and the state championship for Strickfield High, his head exploded all over the field. The police reports say someone fired a high-powered rifle at Brandlake. No one knows who was behind it. But I'm sure the question you want to know the answers to are, Bella, you're a Strickfield High cheerleader, right? Aren't you the bitch master vampire who could have stopped Brandlake after he went all demon? The answers are yes and fuck yeah. However, I wasn't there that night. You see, yours truly wasn't allowed on school property or at school functions. Our ever-so-esteemed principal, Matthew Van Diest, suspended me from school just prior to the state championship game. In fact, it was our quarterback, Jason Norman, who got me suspended. Let me tell you about it. It was the Wednesday prior, when Aileen Donnerly and I were walking the halls of Strickfield High to get to our lockers. Both of us were wearing our cheerleading outfits since basketball season had started and we had to cheer for a game that night. 2 nights later, we would have to cheer for our football team at the state championship game. Einie and I were opening our lockers and talking about shit when Jason Norman came up right behind me and groped my tiny little titties. "You're easily the hottest cheerleader at this school, Bella," he said slyly in my ear. "Looking at you, I can tell you need a good fucking. Let's skip school and I'll take care of you." Clearly, this stupid mortal didn't know who he was fucking with. It was time to teach him a very important lesson that every red-blooded young American boy needed to know. You never put your fucking hands on me unless I want you to. "Big mistake, motherfucker," I hissed as I turned around, grabbed him, and slammed him into the nearby lockers. Norman made some serious dents across them. He got back up and came at me again. Now, people at Strickfield High call me the bad schoolgirl. One reason is they know I'm strong as fuck. They didn't know I was really a master vampire, a rare one who can walk in daylight and doesn't have to drink blood. Norman sneered to tell me he would have me, no matter what. When he tried putting his hands on me again, I lifted him up off his feet and threw him right through a classroom door. And wouldn't you know it, Principal Van Diest had seen me. Now, either he wasn't around to see Norman grope me, or he just didn't like how extreme I got. Principal Van Diest raised his voice to me for the first time ever and practically screamed for me to go to the office. He wouldn't even let me tell my side of the story. No, as far as he was concerned, I'd assaulted the star quarterback of Strickfield High. "Oh, fuck you," I told him right to his face. "It's quite all right for him to have his hands all over me, but I'm not allowed to defend myself? You know what? You can go suck my dick." The next thing I knew, he was writing up my suspension. "You do not come anywhere near this school for 2 weeks, Bella Tabon. And that means no cheerleading. You're going to learn your place here at Strickfield High, one way or another." I gave him my wicked little smile, the one that got my grandparents to start calling me Little Devil when I was younger. Then I raised my fists together and do what scrawny geek Jaron Hatley had done months ago. I brought my fists down and destroyed his desk. Boy, did he ever shriek. I don't believe he shit his pants, but the look on his face was priceless. Now we're at present time. Now you know why I wasn't at the state championship game shaking my tits and ass with the rest of the girls when the Brand Lake demon shit went down. Sometimes I run into Principal Van Diest on the streets. He always looks worried whenever he passes me. Probably thinking I'm gonna kick his ass or something. Yeah, like I'd waste my time and energy on a pathetic loser like him.
Don't go away. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
But I'd bite and give him my little devil smirk. Thanks to Eerie. I don't really need her to do that for me, but she's just doing her duty by me as my best friend. Martin, Aileen's older brother, calls her Einstein on the count of how smart she is. I've been calling her Eerie for short. In response, she calls me Bells. It's Saturday morning, the week after the big game and Greg Brandlake's death. Martin and I have been mostly distant. Pretty much since Eerie and I got back from vacationing in Shore City back in June. Martin makes another one of his stupid attempts to try and talk to me before he takes off to go work at Denoyer's Grill. I'm about to let him go fuck himself when I notice Eerie has that look on her face that tells me something's on her mind. Not even acknowledging Martin, I follow Eerie so we can go and talk in private. Oh, I can feel Martin glaring at me as he walks out and slams the back door behind him. Well, fuck him. He doesn't deserve any of my time after Eerie told me he's the main reason why she's sick. When we're alone, we face each other. Talk to me, Eerie, I say. Am I still that obvious, Bells? She asks in her mousy voice. How long have we been best friends, Eerie? I remind her. She groans a little. We've got this new hot girl at school. Her name's Lavender Collier. Everybody's just gawking at her. I mean, she's really put together. She could be Taylor Mirren's body double. I have to think about this. Okay, Eerie, so you're saying she's got a hot porn star body. She wouldn't be the only one like that at school, you know. Eerie tightens her fists and growls a little. Yeah, but every damn guy is practically drooling over her. She's even telling people she wants your place on the cheerleading squad. So let her fucking have it, I reply. Eerie unballs her fists and points right at me. No, you don't, Bells. You're not getting away from school that easily. Especially not when Principal Van Diest is itching to put Lavender on the squad. Seriously, she's got him eating right out of her hand. Principal Van Diest always has his eyes on other girls' tits, I emphasize. Fuck, he can't even keep his eyes off my little speed bumps. Eerie's really agitated now. Then she jumps up and down quickly a few times as she growls. Will you listen to me? I'm trying to tell you something's not right about Lavender. I remember Eerie's my best friend and get serious. Okay. Did you see something that wasn't right with her? She calms down and nods. She kissed one of those jocks in the hallway yesterday. I mean, she really planted one on him. Then he breaks up with his girlfriend right in front of everybody. He literally became Lavender's lapdog, doing whatever she wanted. And then something clicks in my brain. Keep talking. Eerie takes a deep breath and looks me right in the face. His body was found in his bedroom this morning. She hands me today's paper. Look, I read the top story about Jacob Lautner, a star basketball player for Strickfield High who was found dead in his bedroom. The cause of death was unknown, but his body looked like the human equivalent of a prune. It made me think of that science fiction movie Eerie had me watch with her and her cousin Madeline about a month ago called Life Force. If you've seen it, then you know what I'm talking about here. Eerie looks desperate now. Something's wrong here, Bells. Please believe me. I put the paper down and put my hand on her shoulder. I believe you. I think I may know what's going on, but I have to get a closer look at this Lavender Collier to be sure. How will you get into school? Eerie inquires. You're suspended, remember? Principal Van Diest said he'd expel you if you came back before your suspension was over. I give her my little devil smile. Maybe he will, and maybe he won't. Eerie gives me her worried look. What are you going to do, Bells? Monday comes, I'm back to walking the halls of Strickfield High with Eerie. It's not long before Principal Van Diest passes both of us. He just looks at me the way he always looks at the bad schoolgirl. He makes it a quick point to check out my sexy schoolgirl outfit, the shirt with the sleeves torn off and tied in the front to reveal my black bra and a plaid miniskirt with my men's 80s Reebok pump basketball shoes. Some people here have joked that I'm a runaway from Strickfield Academy. Even now, I'm sure Principal Van Diest is undressing me in his mind. Just the same, he doesn't say a fucking thing about my suspension. What happened? I got Eerie to distract him in the office long enough for me to slip in the way vampires do. I grabbed a hold of Van Diest and gave him a light brushing of glam to make him forget that he suspended me. Since I only gave him just a tiny bit of glam, I have to be careful not to provoke him too much. Otherwise, he'll snap out of it and remember that this little devil is his mortal enemy, and that I'm suspended. I know, why not just wipe his mind completely, right? Because my glam is quite powerful for being a master vampire. If I'm not careful with how I apply it, I can do some serious, irreparable damage to somebody's mind. I'd rather not do that shit unless someone truly deserves it. I may be a wicked little devil, but I'm not inhumane. Okay, Eerie, show me Lavender Collier, I say. Eerie's looking around, then she suddenly grabs my wrist. Behind us, Bells! We both turn to see she's with Principal Van Diest. Holy fucking shit! Eerie's not kidding when she said this bitch is hot. I mean, she's got it all. Looks, sexy body, huge tits, and lavender hair. Thanks to my master vampire sight, I can see that it's her natural hair color, and not a dye job. I know exactly what this creature is. She's a succubus, I whisper to Eerie. Think of her as being a vampire, except instead of drinking blood, she steals sexual energy from men. But why would she go after somebody like Van Diest? Eerie wonders. And then Eerie gasps when we see Lavender slide her tongue into the principal's mouth. You'd swear the other students passing by would have seen it, but they just act like nothing's going on. The succubus is emitting some kind of a field that makes them not see her inhaling Van Diest. The only reason why Eerie and I can see her is because our minds are strong. Guess that shows a lot of these students here are just going through the motions, if you know what I mean. Eerie and I both head into an empty classroom to talk. Can you stop her, Bells? She asks. I can, but school isn't the place, I answer. Lavender is very powerful. I can see it in her aura. I can't risk getting other students hurt. But why go after Principal Van Diest, Bells? He's not exactly a prize catch, right? I raise my finger. On the contrary, one thing you need to know about a succubus: she doesn't care what a male looks like as long as he's got a great deal of sexual energy. You're in the ballpark, though, when it comes to Van Diest. You just know he's not with anybody. He definitely wants to be, which is why he's checking out other girls. He's got so much pent-up sexual energy, he's just perfect for somebody like Lavender Collier. She won't take him here. No, she's priming him up. She'll likely come for him tonight when he's sleeping and dreaming about her. And that's where we're gonna be. You two! An all-too-familiar voice calls out. We turn to see Principal Van Diest standing in the doorway. He turns on the light and sees us. He points to Aileen. Get to class, now! Then he points to me. And you can tack on another week to your suspension, Bella Tabon. Damn it! That fucking succubus was able to overpower my glam with her allure. Van Diest remembers everything regarding me. He comes straight to me and grabs my arm. Normally I'd have beaten the living shit out of a man for that, but there's a fucking succubus involved. Okay, Van Diest, you get this one for free. He walks me to the main doors, and yes, every nearby student is looking right at us. He pushes open one of the doors and shoves me through it. Then he steps outside and points right at me. I'm getting sick and tired of you thinking you run my school, Bella Tabon. You need to remember I'm the principal here. Me. And then I notice he's staring me down again. Me being as scantily clad as I am can work to my advantage here. I move my hands up to my hair and pose for him just enough to where Van Diest can see my sex appeal. I may not have the glamorous body of a succubus, but there are plenty of males here at Strickfield High who would love to be mine. Are you one of those people, Matthew Van Diest? Let's just see who's got more allure here, the voluptuous succubus or the skin-tight vampire.
Shh, it was only the wind. You're safe. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Van Diest is just stammering his words as he keeps ripping me one new ass after another. I've already said I have little speed bumps for tits, but he's still drawn to them. He's still quite attracted to my tight body. I'm not even using glam on him. Like that fucking succubus in the school, I can wrap people so tight around my little finger, they'll do anything I tell them. So I guess you can say Lavender and I aren't that much different in that department. And that's when I see the bitch looking out and glaring at me. Now, I've never been sure whether or not a succubus or an incubus can sense a vampire. A master vampire can sense them for sure. Lavender looks ready to come outside and confront me, but she knows that's probably not a good idea. No, Lavender doesn't want people knowing what Eerie and I both know. I keep turning on the charm for Van Diest. I don't even have to go full porno on him. Just showing a curve here and there, keeping his full attention on my nearly naked body. Guess bigger tits ain't always better, huh, Lavender? I'm laughing my ass off deep down. Lavender is fucking pissed at me now. Good. Come for me, bitch. And then I have a hell of a plan. I don't know if Van Diest heard the bell ring, but I sure did. Still, he's rambling on and even repeats a few things to me as he's still undressing me with his eyes. Still holding Lavender's attention, it's time to do the unthinkable. I come in close to Van Diest and lock my lips with his. Boy, do his fucking arms ever wrap me up. He holds me oh so gently to him as we share a soft kiss together. And then I hear his heart beating and realize I just made a huge mistake. I quickly back the fuck away from Principal Van Diest. Then he just looks right at me. Bella, I know, I'm suspended, I quickly reply. Getting my ass off school property right now. Then I give him 2 middle fingers. And you can go fuck yourself. Just then a teacher sees Lavender and tells her to get to class. At first she won't go, but she ultimately doesn't have a choice if she doesn't want to expose herself. She finally leaves. Knowing I did what I wanted to do in provoking Lavender, I turn and start walking away. As I turn the corner, Van Diest snatches my wrist. Now you wait just a minute! As I turn around to face him, we suddenly lock lips again. This time the kiss lasts a little longer. Then we come apart. What in the actual fuck? When I hear his heartbeat again, I have my confirmation that I truly fucked up. I know now that Principal Van Diest has desired me for a very long time. I don't mean he just wants to have hot and nasty sex with me. I mean, he wants to be with me. He's fucking in love with me. I compose myself and raise my finger. Okay, Matthew. 1, you know fucking goddamn well what we're doing is quite forbidden. Read the student handbook. 2, you'd have to decide if you want Lavender or me. And 3, it'll never work between you and me in any case. And since I'm not supposed to be here. When we hear someone opening one of the main doors and calling for Van Diest, he glances over his shoulder. When he goes to look back at me, I'm gone. Yeah, just like Batman. The little devil in me loves pulling that shit on him. But this wasn't a case of me being a little devil here. I had to get the fuck away from Van Diest. I need to think. I'm out on the football field when Eerie finds me at lunch break. Bells, you okay? She asks, sitting down next to me. I shake my head. No. And you're gonna be so pissed off at me. I tell Eerie everything. Her jaw drops. Are you saying, I get Principal Van Diest has a thing for you. I've known that ever since I first brought you to Strickfield High. But are you in love with him? I sigh. Einie, you know Martin and I aren't fucking anymore. Ever since your grandma talked to me about him and you told me how you got sick, there's just no way in hell. Also, I can smell that he's been fucking other girls. I sigh. But I have feelings and needs too. Go ahead, rip me some new asses. Nothing you haven't done before. Einie just looks at me and groans in frustration herself. So, what are you going to do about Van Diest? You can't just leave him for Lavender to suck up. No fucking shit, I mutter. He's a fucking worm of a man, but I have to save him. Lavender will come for him tonight. She plans to fuck him and take his sexual energy. Van Diest will end up just like Jacob Lautner if that happens. I swear, the shit you get me into, Einie. She looks apologetic now. I had to tell you, Bells. I smirk a little and pat her shoulder. I know. I'm glad you did. I just didn't expect this. I put my hands on my forehead and groan. Fuck! That night, Einie and I are hiding in Van Diest's backyard. Thanks to my night vision, I can see shit like it's still daylight. Van Diest is sitting at his computer. I recently discovered I can focus my vampire vision to zoom in on things. I can see Van Diest has the Strickfield High website up. He's looking at pictures of me. God damn it! That's what I get for attaching a piece of old bloodstone to my choker to allow myself to cast a reflection. I did it so people wouldn't see what they shouldn't. Einie's using night vision goggles she made. She's really putting that big brain of hers to use in building all these new toys we're using when we're out together. I used to tell Einie that I work alone, but you know damn well she's not going to stay put. Einie's definitely not my sidekick. No. She's my partner in crime. To be honest, I like having her around. Then I hear Einie sigh of disgust. I don't know what you did, Bells, but you've definitely set Van Diest on fire. Yeah, no shit, I mutter. How you feeling? Can you do this? I'll be okay. And then, looks like he's getting ready for bed. Lavender will come for him once he's asleep and dreaming. He'll dream about her, assuming her hold on him is still there. I know, I did some research on succubi. I roll my eyes. On what? Wikipedia? Please. She scoffs at me. I never use Wikipedia. Give me a break, Bells. She bumps my arm. You better move. I can sense the tension between Einie and me. She knows I'm feeling something for Van Diest. I move out of the bushes and leap up onto the roof. I walk barefoot to his window and look in, making sure he doesn't see me. Even out here, I can still hear his heart beating. He still desires me more than anything. Why the fuck did I ever kiss him? He finally falls asleep. I just have to wait until he's dreaming. It's then that I smell Lavender Collier. She comes out of his closet and approaches the bed. Yes, mortal. Your energies are at their utmost, she purrs. Now I shall give you that which you most desire. In turn, you shall sustain me. Once I've fed, then you die. She's wearing a red dress and is already barefoot. She easily undoes the shoulder straps and lets the dress drop to the floor. Naked, she slithers onto the bed and lays on top of him. Wake up, my love, Lavender whispers. Take me in your arms and make me yours. I need you so desperately. Van Diest wakes up and sees the beautiful form on top of him. But then something quite adverse happens. No, Van Diest utters, shaking his head. What? Lavender shrieks. This cannot be! How have you broken my allure?
You're not safe yet. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Yeah, I truly drove any thought of Lavender Collier out of his mind when I let him in this morning. His love for me is powerful enough for him to resist her. I realize I can't just stay outside and observe now. I gotta fight the bitch. I burst through the window and glare at Lavender. Get the fuck off him! Right now! Lavender gets off the bed and on the other side. Then she glares at me and begins to change into her true form. She now has big horns on her head, a long tail with a very sharp point on the end, and claws. Seeing her reminds me of pictures I've seen of the Hellweaver. In fact, all succubi are her daughters. I quickly vamp out and raise my claws. You can't have him, I say to Lavender. But I shall, once I have disposed of you, she replies. Bella? What? Van Diest cries out. You're a vampire? Lavender hisses at me and raises her own claws. The two of us leap up and meet over the bed. We punch and claw at each other. I know I'm gonna have a hell of a fight with Lavender. Succubi are very strong and can become quite dangerous when they're threatened over their chosen prey. I eventually grab Lavender and throw her ass out the window. Then I come out after her. I can smell where Eerie is and know she's watching us fight. I'm feeling so high-strung right now. I fucking love to fight. My desire to fight really increased after I became my own unique master vampire, along with my appetite and my libido. Lavender and I attack and roll around on each other. We throw each other into things. She's really quite strong and can possibly match my strength. She hisses loudly in frustration when I won't stay down. She even tries to claw at my heart. Hate to tell you, bitch, but going for my heart won't help you in the least, I tell her. No lie, while it takes a stake through the heart and decapitation to destroy a traditional master vampire, this method does not work on me. I've been staked and beheaded twice during my existence as a master vampire. When Thornton Gillian's blood mixed with my pure Tabon blood, those many years ago, it made me something truly unique. I'm beginning to think I may never be capable of dying. Lavender and I have bled each other with our claws, though our injuries heal almost immediately. This certainly isn't your usual high school catfight either. No, Lavender knows how to fight, same as I do. Our styles differ on the count of our training. What Lavender is about to find out is that she picked the wrong fucking cunt to fight. You see, Eerie and I both know how to kill these fucking things. In fact, I'm about to use one of those toys she whipped up. I have launchers strapped to my forearms. She originally made them for fighting enemy vampires. We used them to fight werewolves back in early June at Shore City. In fact, it'll be the same method we use to end the werewolves that'll end this succubus. Since I've kept Lavender from fucking Van Diest, she hasn't been able to feed. By keeping her fighting with me, she's gotten weaker. I finally get her to the point where she's desperate. When she tries to grab my head to rip it off, I hold her to me and position one of my launchers at her heart region. Lavender shrieks and then cries out in serious pain when she feels the tip of the silver stake coming out of her back. That's how you kill them. Silver. But you have to have a substantial amount of it, like in a steak. Something as small as a silver bullet can kill a werewolf, but something as big as a silver steak is what you need for killing these fucking bitches. The only exception is Hellweaver herself. Lavender falls back and tries to remove the silver stake from her heart. It's in there pretty tight, and she's too weak. You bitch, Lavender moans. My mother will destroy you for this. I sneer as I raise my middle finger. Your mother can make like a dildo and go fuck herself. Lavender finally dies. Then she begins to melt away, even her bones. Soon there's nothing left but residue and the silver stake. I pick it up and hand it to Eerie when she comes beside me. You okay, Bells? Still kicking, I answer. Okay, we can go home then, she says. I sigh. Not yet. Van Diest has seen me. He knows what I am now. I have to go back and glam him to make him forget. Eerie gives me a doubtful look. You're really going to sleep with him, aren't you? I just lower my head. I can't walk away. He knows my secret. She and I just look at each other for a long moment. Then she turns and walks away. I want to call her out, but... Sigh. Van Diest is still in his bed with covers pulled up to his chin when I return. When he sees me, he pushes the covers down and quickly gets out of bed. He comes right to me and takes me in his arms. I'm still in my vampire form, and he's not the least bit afraid of me. We don't talk. I can tell he wants to tell me he loves me. I can feel my own feelings. I don't understand why I feel for someone like Matthew Van Diest, given what I know about him at school. In the truest sense of age, it wouldn't be wrong for us to be together. He's in his early 40s, and I appear to be 17, which was how old I was when I came to be a master vampire, back in 1889. I'm easily the older woman here. Now we share a long, deep, passionate kiss. Truly, Van Diest has loved me for quite some time. I don't know if I've always harbored feelings for him as much as I've played with him at school. He's always tried to tame the bad schoolgirl, but he continues to find I just can't be tamed. If anything, I keep him honest. But I gotta be honest with myself. As much as I'd truly love to see where this forbidden relationship would take us, I gotta pull away. I do just that after we finish our kiss. His eyes are on mine now. He's sinking deep into me. His will is mine. Okay, Matthew, I begin. The next morning, Eerie and I walk into Strickfield High together. Principal Van Diest immediately sees us and... He's undressing me with his eyes. I play with him again by flipping him off and flicking my tongue for him. He just glares at me, but does nothing. I can still hear his heartbeat. He still loves me with all his heart and soul. Even my powerful glam can't remove or change true emotions. Eerie nods for us to go into an empty classroom. We go in there to talk. Bells, why didn't you pursue Van Diest? She asks. I know you want to. I shake my head a little. Because you mean more to me than he does. When you walked away from me last night, it really hurt. I even cried a little. I never expected to have a friend like you. I love you, Eerie. A forbidden relationship with Van Diest isn't worth losing your friendship over. I may be having emotional issues, but I'm not a fool. Eerie and I come together and hug. I love you too, Bells. And thank you for always sticking by me. After we come out of our hug, we leave the classroom and make our way to first period to start the school day. Deep down, I have the feeling it's only going to be a matter of time before something drastic happens to bring Van Diest and me dangerously close to each other once again. But not today.
Echoes by Shane Migliavacca. I first met him last week, though I'd heard about the new guy in town before that. Castle, New York was the smallest of small towns. Word travels fast when somebody new moves to town. Travis looked like he stepped out of one of those 50s biker films, and last Thursday, when he walked into the diner I work at, I couldn't take my eyes off him, and he knew it. He caught me looking at him and smiled that sly smile of his. My eyes darted away, and I tried to make it look like I was working around the diner, but it was too late. He strode over to me. "Hello there," he said. "Hey." I tried to sound confident, like I didn't give a fuck, but my voice cracked. He smiled at me. "Can I get a chocolate milkshake to go?" "Sure." I heard they're like, wow, here. I started making the shake as he leaned on the counter. He looked at his reflection in the glass case of donuts, adjusting his perfect hair. "Yeah, they're really good," I said, unsuccessfully thinking of something cool to say. Lived here all your life? He asked. Unfortunately. Ain't so bad. I've been to worse. I finished the shake and brought it over to him. He gave me a wink and took a sip. Before I could say anything, he slid a $10 bill across the counter. A large silver ring gleamed on his hand. He turned and started to leave. Let me get your change. The rest is for you, Dolly. I watched him go. Dolly? I felt a bit offended, but at the same time I was feeling something else. Love? Lust? Whatever it was, it made me somewhat forgiving of the Dolly remark. So that's the new guy. Not bad. I turned and it was my coworker and friend Bren. She adjusted her raven hair. What did he say to you, Ronnie? Nothing much, just wanted a milkshake. Yeah, yours. We both laughed. Bren has this obnoxious laugh that usually ends up making me laugh even harder. The next day he didn't show up, but the day after that, he was there again. This time wanting a milkshake and a burger. No matter who waited on him, he always ended up talking to me, usually asking me about some town idiosyncrasy or whatnot, always coming in at the same time, every other day. It continued like this for a month. We'd small talk a little and then he'd leave. I never saw him outside of the diner. Then one day, he changed the routine. I got off work one sunny Monday afternoon and Travis was waiting for me. He was leaning ever so slightly against the side of the diner. He smiled at me. Hey, I said. Hey, he answered. He flicked out a metal lighter and lit a slim cigarette. So what do you do for a kick around here? There's the movie theater or the bowling alley. No, you. He took a puff. Me? Not much. Nah? Dang shame. Pretty little girl like you. Thanks. The flattery made me blush. Was he hitting on me? I sucked at this kind of thing. I wasn't sure if he wanted me to say anything. I haven't found much in town to get excited about. Dullsville, really. He took a long drag on his cigarette. So I was wondering if, you want to hang. I thought for a second. He's asking me out. I suck at dating. He's good looking and seems nice, but there's no way a date between us won't end in embarrassment for me. And perhaps him too. How can I talk him out of it? It's kind of been a rough day, you know? Mondays, I just want to go back home and chill. It don't have to be today. Oh, cool. So, want to see a flick? He said. Show the new guy the sights? Sure. Am I really going to do this? Yeah, I guess I was. Why not? I deserve some fun, right? Right. You do. Bren was always trying to get me to go out. This would really shock her. Tomorrow night good? I thought about it. Did you know I didn't have to work the day after? Sure. Aces. It's a date then. I'll let you pick the flick. Cool? Yeah. He looked at me. You should always have your hair like that. I touched my hair. I forgot I tied it back at work. This was probably the first time he saw it loose. It's so beautiful and red, like a rose. Thanks. My face lit up as I blushed. Great. Gotta run, babe. Be seeing you. He did a little point at me and winked before leaving, the spurs on the back of his cowboy boots jangling as he went. What had I got myself into? Our first date went well, as did the next 3. Before I realized it, we were a thing in town. I think Bren was jealous. For our 5th date, Travis wanted to take me on a picnic to Harmony Lake. It would be our first date in a less public space. I wasn't too worried. On every date, Travis had been quite the gentleman. I was getting ready in the apartment I share with Bren. I stood doing my hair, over and over again. You look good, let it go, she said. I turned from the mirror and presented myself. You think? I said, twirling around in my new dress. You're hideous. Hilarious. Seriously, hun, you look amazeballs. She hugged me. Have fun at the lake. Try not to get too lucky. Hey, it's been a while, but not that long. Travis picked me up in his 1957 Plymouth Fury. It was a convertible. The thing looked like a shark that decided to crawl out of the ocean and start looking for meals on land. He tooted the horn as he pulled up. You look stunning, babe, he said. Ever the gentleman, he wouldn't let me into the car unless he got out and opened the door for me. Some old song was playing on the car radio. In fact, I don't think he ever listened to anything after the 50s. We headed out of town as The King sang on the radio. I can't get over your car, Travis, I said. It looks so good for its age. I'd take care of this baby. Means a lot to me. Sentimental value. I keep her cherry. Try to get maximum performance. He steps on the gas and we're moving a little too fast through town. I look at him nervously as he speeds up. Don't sweat it, Rose. I got this. Travis had started calling me Rose. Honestly, I didn't mind. He took my hand. I think today is going to be special. The lake looked beautiful in the summer sun as we walked to a nice secluded spot under a large tree. Travis left the car radio on. Down in the willow garden, where me and my love did meet. He set down a large blanket. My dear, he said, ushering me to the blanket. We brought quite the selection of food. Travis popped open a bottle of wine. Was that weird for a picnic? He caught me making a face. Don't tell me you don't drink wine. No, just seems like a bit much for an afternoon picnic. Well, it's a celebration too, babe. It is? What are we celebrating? 5 dates. I laugh. Okay, I'll drink to that. My love, she did not know. The song played on as he poured us each a glass of wine. We eat, and I take a couple sips of wine. I haven't had much in the way of wine, but this is really good. I wonder where he dug it up around here. As we eat, we talk, mostly about me. He always has so many questions. Every time I ask him something about him, he seems sad, almost on the verge of tears. I don't want to bring up any bad memories. As we talk, my head starts to feel light, which was a dreadful sign. What's up, Ronnie? Wow, getting a head rush. I try to stand up, but my legs feel like rubber. Travis catches me as I come crashing back down. On the radio, the song keeps repeating. A dreadful sign. He brushes the hair out of my face and gives me a sad smile. I'm so sorry, doll. What? Sorry about... I stammer. My mouth doesn't want to move. I'm sorry. You have to die. All beauty must die. It's my curse. I summon up all my strength and push away from Travis. He tries to grab me and I scratch his face with my nails. Trying to stand again, I fall to my knees. The world begins shaking apart at the seams. My eyelids feel heavy. Every time I blink, it feels like it'll be my last. Maybe if I just sleep, it'll be better. I'll wake up from this nightmare. No, fight it. I start crawling on all fours, dragging myself, digging my nails into the ground. I have to get away, have to fight, have to get to the car. A dreadful sign. I see someone standing by Travis's car. I can't make them out. Why won't they? Help! Please! Rose, no one can help. I'm sorry. He grabs me by the leg, pulling me back. Travis turns me over, glaring at me. The scratches on his face aren't bleeding. I like playing with you, Rose, he said, but my dear, you're breaking my heart. Fuck you! I try to hit him, but I have no strength left. Why won't that person do something? He stands up, pulling a large knife from his leather jacket. I could gut you, but that's no fun. Not anymore. He looks at his reflection on the knife blade. He adjusts his hair. I used to find his vanity cute. Bastard. The poison isn't killing you, just making it hard for you to do anything. Why? Why not? I tried to move my head to see if that person was still standing there. A dreadful sign. Why is that song repeating? Is that an effect from the drugs? Travis notices me trying to look at the car. I can hear him talking to somebody, I think. Go away, he says. You're not welcome here. He turns the radio off. Who was that? Who was he talking to? After what seems like hours, Travis comes back holding a large cinder block and rope.
Did you hear that? Better check the locks on your doors. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Comfortable, doll? Go to hell, I manage, my mouth starting to fail me. Travis just laughs. Be right back. He walks off, carrying the cinder block and rope. My mind races. Move! Move! But I can't. It's physically impossible. I try to will myself, picturing my spirit leaving my body, flying over the trees, finding Bren or my folks, telling them what's happening here. If I want it strong enough, I can make it happen. Run! Flee! I will my spirit to soar. He comes back, standing over me. He reaches down and grabs my legs. Going for a little trip, my beautiful rose? He drags me across the ground. I can see the grass ending as we go over a rocky area. But I can't feel any of it. I can't feel his hands on my legs, just a great numbness. We go up a small hill near the beach. He stops dragging me. We're here. We don't have much time left together. He kneels down and touches my face, wiping away my tears. He pulls out 2 coins and puts one on each of my eyes. I blink my eyes and they slide off. He gets frustrated. Why did you do that? They're for your journey over. He takes them and sticks them in one of my hands, balling it into a fist. I see the cinder block with the rope tied to it near my feet. He crawls over to it and ties the rope to my legs. No, no, no. He's gonna drown me. You've been a blast. He picks up the cinder block and walks to the edge of the hill overlooking the lake. I scream, but my throat fails me. I can barely make more than a crackling noise. He hefts the block up. He sighs, parting. Sweet sorrow, and whatnot. He throws the block over the side and I can hear the rope quickly chasing after it, knowing that any second I'll be following it. And then I'm falling, followed by the slam of hitting the water. I sink, my lungs quickly filling with water. I welcome it. Please, let there be peace. I feel so tired. I just want it to be over. I can see the sunlight trickling down through the water. Darkness starts to creep into my vision until the light is swallowed by it. I wake, unable to move, my heart racing. Where am I? I'm in my room, laying on my bed. I hear a noise, a crackling hiss, almost like static. My eyes catch movement in the darkness. The thing nears the edge of my bed. My heart pounds faster and faster. Am I having a heart attack? A low whispering hiss comes from the shade at the foot of my bed. Not a dream. Heed the sign. And then the world went back to normal. I could move again. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. My heartbeat started to slow. I curled up in a ball on the bed, pulling the blankets over me. For the longest time, I didn't move, fearing that thing was waiting for me in the darkness. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep again. I woke and my room was lit by the light of early morning. Had it just been a dream? A nightmare? I get up, dangling my legs over the side of the bed. Was this all a nightmare brought on by being nervous? Over my big date with Travis? I stand in the shower, almost in a trance, as the water pours over me. I've taken plenty of showers before, but this just seems weird. The water feels like it's closing in on me. I hear the jarring sound of static. Through the shower curtain, I see a dark shape move. The thing from my nightmare. It's back for me. I back against the shower wall. The wet tiles are cold against my back. I run my hands over them, looking for escape. A voice snaps me back to reality. "You almost done?" Bren says, annoyance in her voice. "Water will be freaking cold." "Sorry, almost done." I hear the door slam shut. All dread has faded away, and I just feel like a shit for hogging the shower. I get out and dry off quick, trying not to waste any more time. I leave the bathroom, a towel wrapped around me. Bren is waiting for me by the door. "You okay?" "Why? What were you doing in the shower so long? Daydreaming? Or a little pre-date gratification?" I shoot her a look, and Bren does that laugh of hers. "I'm sorry, Ronnie. I know you're all stressed." She gives me a kiss on the cheek and goes into the bathroom, shutting the door behind her. I hear the lock click. Guess I should have done that. At work, it's no easier. My mind drifts all day, thinking about our date this afternoon. The day moves in slow motion. What seemed like hours were, in fact, minutes when I looked at the clock, and everything I did at work seemed like the wrong thing. Giving people the wrong order, spilling drinks. I shouldn't be this stressed over a date. No, it was that dream, that nightmare. I consider calling the picnic off, but by the time my shift is over, I've reconsidered. Maybe I could turn this day around. When we get back to the apartment, I strip out of my waitress uniform and splash some water on my face. The water seems to engulf the room for the briefest of seconds, but the hallucination quickly fades. Am I losing my mind? The lake looked beautiful in the summer sun. We found a nice secluded spot under a large tree. Travis left the car nearby. He had the top down and the radio on. "Down in the willow garden, where me and my love did meet." He sat down a large basket. "My dear," he said, ushering me to the blanket with a wave of his hand. We'd brought quite the selection of food. Travis popped open a bottle of wine. Was that weird for a picnic? He caught me making a face. "Have we done this before?" "Don't tell me you don't drink wine." "No, just seems a bit much for a afternoon picnic." "Well, it's a celebration too, babe." "My love, she did not know." I put my hand up. "I'm sorry, but I don't think I should. I'm feeling a little sick." "Sick? Everything okay?" "I just had a rough night. Bad nightmare." He touches my hand. I don't know why this makes me flinch. He looks at me, puzzled. "What kind of nightmare?" "I think I was drowning, and there was this figure there. When I woke up, I swear it was still there." "You know." He starts pouring wine into the glasses. "I think you need a little nip of wine, my rose." "No, really, it's okay. It'll help your nerves." "Okay, maybe just a little." Travis hands me one of the glasses. There's the sound of static cutting through the air, like someone's adjusting the radio. "A dreadful sign." I look over at Travis's car and see it there. The thing from my nightmare. The glass of wine falls from my hand. It hits the ground, rolling and spilling all over the blanket. The song skips, or repeats. "A dreadful sign, not a dream," it said. "Heed the sign." At first, I don't realize I'm screaming until I see Travis's face. He grimaces. He grabs me, clapping a hand over my mouth. He holds me so tight, I start to tear up. "Shut the fuck up, would you?" I try to pull away, but his hands are like iron clamps. I can see the anger in his eyes. He looks over to the thing standing next to the car. "A dreadful sign." "That's not going to help you, Ronnie, dear," he says, his voice never wavering. It's just an echo. As if robbed of its power, the thing evaporates into the air. He tightens his grip. Tears stream down my cheeks, soaking his hand. I see the wine bottle lying there, just out of reach of my free hand. I could hit him with it. Listen to yourself. You're gonna hit him? This is nuts. It has to be a game, right? No, it's not. I just need a weapon. To get away. I rake his face with my fingernails, scratching jagged lines down his face. For all the world, it sounded like running your nails over stone. He lets go of me, and I lunge for the wine bottle. As I reach for the bottle, he grabs me by the belt of my jeans. The bottle slips from my hands as he yanks me towards him, rolling just out of reach. I dig my feet and hands into the ground, pulling myself towards the bottle, the sun reflecting off of it. Like some magical weapon, it beckoned to me. My arms and legs burned as I strained. Almost. My fingers brushed off the smooth neck of the bottle. Why won't you let me help you? Travis says. Help me? I'm gonna free you of all this bullshit. I manage a last bit of strength and grab the goddamn bottle. I swing it and hit him square in the side of the head. Unlike in the movies, the bottle doesn't break. Travis lets go of me. I hit him again and again. The bottle doesn't break. He falls to the ground, momentarily stunned. I bring the bottle down again on his head for good measure. This time, it shatters. I turn and run for his car. As I reach the car, Travis appears, pulling a large knife from his leather jacket. I didn't want to make a mess, Rose. He touches the wounds on his face. Gonna have to fix these. I slide into the driver's seat. Yes, the keys are there. I start the car. It roars to life. I hit the gas, aiming right for Travis. This is insane. Am I in a never-ending nightmare? I ram into him, sending his body flying up onto the hood. He smashes through the windshield, his face contorted in a wicked smile. Hold hands, you lovebirds, he says. The car plunges into the lake. Water rushes in as we sink. The nightmare. I'm going to drown here. With him. A shard of broken window floats by me as we sink down. I grab it. The jagged edges cut into my hand. I take it, jabbing it into his eye. He lets go of me. He smiles at me as I push him away. I swim through the open top. For however long I live, I don't think I'll ever forget that smile. The jagged shard embedded in his eye. Travis and his car sinking to the bottom. I pull myself onto the beach. I think I pass out for a while, lying there in the dirt, soaking wet. I wake with a start and see a shadow fall across me. I look up and see that thing, the thing from my nightmare standing over me. Its face and arms are blue and bloated. Its face, vaguely feminine. Its remaining hair, rotten, hangs down in long strands. It wore a dress. My dress. Roxie by Charles Campbell. Thunder only happens when it's raining, or so Stevie sang in the popular Fleetwood Mac song. But I've found, in my lifetime anyway, that is not always the case. It can thunder without rain, and it can be, oh, so very loud. So loud, in fact, that it drowns out everything that once was important. What was my thunder, you ask? My thunder was a girl named Roxie, and she rumbled into my life 2 short years ago. I wish she hadn't. 2 years ago. Jake Blackman was walking his mutt of a dog, minding his own business, when she passed him by. Jake caught a whiff of sweetness and turned his head. He took a deep breath. The scent was immediately intoxicating. And, when he saw her, his eyes widened as if he had just stumbled upon the Holy Grail. She was the prettiest girl he'd ever seen. She stopped when she noticed him staring at her. Jake fumbled for his words. Hi, your name's Jake. What's yours? He winced as soon as the words escaped his lips. He felt better when she giggled. "You're a cute one, aren't you?" she asked. Her skin was like porcelain, and her smile cut through Jake in such a way he felt lightheaded. "Let me try that again. I'm Jake Blackman. What's your name?" "Roxie," she replied. "Roxie what?" "No Roxie what. Just Roxie," she answered. Her long jet black hair hung around her shoulders like a shawl on a cold night. Roxie's eyes were dark brown pools that pulled Jake in like a cobra. And her smell. He couldn't quite describe it. It was sweet for sure, but not sickeningly so. It was a smell that felt ancient and new at the same time. Roxie was a different breed, and Jake felt it. It made him want her. Jake's mutt of a dog was even enamored with the woman. Normally, he'd sound off with barks and growls around someone new, but Rusty seemed to be just as love-struck with Roxie as his owner. He was sniffing her black knee-high boots. "Oh, what's your dog's name?" Roxie asked as she knelt down and stroked Rusty's head. Jake struggled to remember, and Roxie let him off the hook. "Oh, his tag says Rusty." "Hey, Rusty," she said as she stood. Rusty jumped up, his dirty paws leaving streaks on her boots. "Rusty, stop! I'm so sorry," Jake said. "It's all good, Jake. They'll wipe off. You want to buy a girl dinner?" she asked. Jake was nodding his head, and she knew this was going to be easy. After a dinner of burgers and fries, they walked back to Jake's house with Rusty hanging closer to Roxie than the man that fed him. Jake was completely in love with this woman. Everything about her, her look, her smell, the way she spoke to him in an unassuming tone, keeping Jake on edge, in a good way. He felt the thunder for the first time when they went inside. "Do you love me, Jake?" Roxie asked as soon as they were inside the house. "I do, Roxie," he said. It wasn't a lie. He was madly in love with her. Roxie led Jake to the bedroom as if she had lived there all her life. Rusty followed behind and whimpered when the door closed in his face. Roxie and Jake made love. Jake felt the thunder roll through his heart. She was lying in his arms, and no words were spoken as the rain began to fall outside. It was followed by thunder that paled in comparison to what Roxie had brought him. She was trouble. Somehow, he knew it, but Jake didn't care. He would later. Very early the next morning, Roxie nuzzled her face next to Jake's neck and breathed that sweet breath in his ear before she whispered, "Jake, will you kill for me?" "You know I will," Jake replied without a second thought. She was the cobra, after all, and she had completely glamored him. "That's good, you sweet man. Now, go back to sleep," she whispered, and that's exactly what Jake did. He went to sleep. When he awoke 4 hours later, Roxie was gone. Jake didn't get a phone number, and no last name. The mystery lover blew his world apart without trying. He looked for her high and low. She was gone. Jake remembered what she asked him in the middle of the night, and he remembered his answer. He meant it. He would kill for her. Anything to have her in his life. Rusty missed her too. He whimpered and whined for 2 weeks straight after Roxie disappeared. 2 months after that, Jake wondered if it was even real. Maybe she never really existed. Maybe he made the whole thing up in his mind. It was her scent that he couldn't shake. Jake could almost smell her. He hungered for it, and he wouldn't get a full night's sleep until she was in his arms once again. Another 10 months passed. 1 year later, Jake was now alone. After Roxie left, Rusty was never the same. He stopped eating. He didn't want to take walks anymore. and after more than a few visits to several different veterinarians, none of them could give Jack a plausible explanation as to why Rusty's desire to live was so siphoned away. Rusty passed away one night, lying by the kitchen door. Jake was devastated. It was 3 days after Rusty died, and Jake was walking home with his head hanging. Then, the smell hit him. Jake felt a tingle in the back of his neck. He stopped looking at his feet. "I'm sorry to hear about Rusty," Roxie said. She was standing there in front of him looking exactly as she had 1 year before. Same hair, same clothes, same boots, and she was devastatingly beautiful. Where have you been?" Jake asked. "Oh, it doesn't really matter." "You want to buy a girl dinner?" Roxie asked. Jake's sadness over Rusty vanished. He smiled and took a deep breath of her sweetness. It was even better than he remembered.
Don't go away. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
After a dinner of Caesar salad and wine, they walked hand in hand back to Jake's house without uttering a word. When they got inside, Roxie led him directly to the bedroom where she quickly ripped at Jake's shirt before they both hastily undressed. Roxie pulled him toward her. She kissed him hard and rough. Jake felt a trickle of blood roll down his chin, but he didn't care. Jake lifted Roxie. She was almost weightless, and he set her gently on the bed. She was rough. He was not. He couldn't be. Not with her. He moved slowly over her porcelain body, taking in every feature, and was more intoxicated by the scent than he had ever been by alcohol. He kissed her softly, as if he may break her. As soon as Jake's lips touched Roxie's, she moved so fast. Jake was now under her, and she locked onto his eyes as she moved rhythmically on top of him. She spoke. "Jake, you said you loved me, and now it's time to prove it. I need you to kill for me," Roxie said as she began to grind harder. He was shaking his head in obedience and ecstasy. Jake never took his eyes off of Roxie's, and he saw the change. Her eyes were now opaque, covered by a third lid that sprang from the bottom corner of her eyes. It was like a shark's eyes. He wasn't afraid. Jake was captured. The thunder was louder. The next morning. It was déjà vu because it certainly happened before. Jake woke in a daze, and Roxie was gone. He searched the house like he had the year before, and there was one noticeable difference. There was a single piece of evidence that confirmed to Jake that he wasn't psychotic. It let him know that Roxie was real. There was a note on the kitchen table. He read the only 4 words on the torn sheet of notebook paper. "Kill Billy Couto. Roxie." Billy Couto? Jake asked the empty room. He hadn't the slightest clue who this person was or why he had to die. But he knew he had to do it, because Roxie said so. It was Saturday, so Jake had nowhere to be. He walked to the small desk in the corner of the living room where his laptop lay dormant. Jake clicked the mouse to bring it back to life, and he entered his password, Rusty2017$. A Chrome window was already open, and Jake refreshed the Facebook page. The feed was filled with shared memes, pet and children pictures he could care less about. He quickly typed the name, Billy Couto, into the search bar. There were 3 hits, one of them local with 4 mutual friends. 3 of the mutual friends Jake really didn't know. Jake was pretty loosey-goosey with accepting friend requests. He pretty much accepted them all, and deleted the hot chicks that immediately messaged him out of the blue, looking for money once a request passed. 12 hours later, Billy Couto stepped onto his front porch. There was a chill in the air, but it didn't require a hoodie just yet. Billy lit the Marlboro that hung loosely from his lips. He glanced at his phone, hoping for any kind of communication from the woman that came and went out of his life a couple years ago. She was all he could think about. Billy used to keep his hair cut short, a Marine crew cut if there ever was one. Now, his hair was shoulder length, and he sported a nicely groomed beard. One other change Billy made since she disappeared was discontinuing his monthly shipment of contacts. Instead, Billy opted to get some old-fashioned horn-rimmed glasses, Buddy Holly style. He shouldn't have threatened to expose her, Billy thought. Sure, she was different, but aren't we all? She frightened him, and he couldn't handle it. Then she left, and Billy hadn't seen her since. The sound of a hammer being pulled back brought Billy to the here and now. The cigarette fell from his lips. "Roxie sends her regards," Jake said before the single shot rang out, scrambling Billy's brain, killing him instantly. Dogs were barking in the distance. Jake held the smoking gun and smiled. He had never taken a life, but Roxie was worth it 100 times over. He'd kill the entire fucking town if she asked him to. He went home to an empty house. 10 months later. It was now a life of longing. Roxie was all he could think about. Jake ate just enough to keep him going. The same went for sleep. He muddled through work every day, doing just enough not to get fired. But his once friendly demeanor was replaced by one of constant sadness, and he was indifferent to people that cared. There was only one that mattered to him. Jake did what she asked, and Roxie still hadn't returned. That's really what kept him going. Jake was compelled to wait on her, no matter how long it took. It was Friday afternoon, and Jake was zombie walking home. "Hey, Jake," Roxie said as he approached his house. Jake stopped looking at his feet and raised his head to meet her gaze. Roxie was sitting on the front porch steps, looking exactly as she had always looked, wearing the same outfit. There was one big difference this time. Beside her sat a little girl that was the spitting image of Roxie. Jake gave her a puzzled look. Who's she?" Jake asked. "She's your daughter," Roxie replied. The little girl looked up at Jake with the same brown pools. "That's impossible. If she were mine, she'd still be a baby." "This little girl is at least 3 years old, maybe 4, Jake said. Anger wasn't his emotion. It was confusion. And then a thought slapped him in the face. Billy. He bet it was Billy's daughter. Not that it was a deal-breaker, because he wanted Roxie more than anything. His veil of indifference was yanked away. "Hi, Daddy. My name's Roxie," the little girl said. "What?" Jake asked, looking at her mother. "She's me, and I'm her," Roxie said. "And she's you, too, Jake." The little girl stood and outstretched her hand for a shake. She looked like a living porcelain doll. Jake took the girl's hand and smiled. It fell into the everything was A-OK if Roxie was in his life lane. The three of them walked into the house, together. Jake and Roxie sat together and listened to little Roxie tell her father everything about her life, about the things she had learned. And Jake was amazed. She was smarter than any adult he had ever met, and not in a precocious kid way. She was beyond anything he had ever encountered. The dialect and intelligence with which she spoke frightened Jake. This was no ordinary child, and she had no ordinary mother. Jake remembered the last time he and Roxie made love, and the uniqueness of Roxie's eyes. But Jake thought of himself as quite ordinary. Boring, in fact. He didn't care. He loved Roxie and the little girl by the same name. Little Roxie looked at him with the eyes of her mother. "Daddy? Kill for me," she said. "Sure, sweetie," Jake answered. He was just as charmed by little Roxie. "I need you to kill him," she said, and pointed toward the window. There was an older man walking down the sidewalk toward Jake's house. "Okay," Jake said, and grabbed the baseball bat he kept in the hall closet.
There's more scares where that came from. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
It was secondary protection if he wasn't within reach of his pistol, if someone kicked in his door. Jake casually walked out the front door looking as if he were going to batting practice. The man took notice as soon as Jake stepped from his front porch. "Hey there!" the man shouted, smiled for a second, and waved at Jake. Jake didn't return the wave. He broke into a sprint, and this is when the older man realized the threat. Jake held that bat over his head as he closed the distance between himself and the man. The man held up his hands in a defensive posture. No, don't!" were the two words the man got out of his mouth, before Jake brought the bat down on the man's skull. The dull thunk of wood striking bone filled the air. The older man blinked wildly at Jake. His eyes were crossed and blood trickled down his forehead. He kept his feet with the first strike. Jake brought it down again, and this time it sounded like a ripe melon splitting in half. The man fell face first onto the sidewalk. Jake went to town on the corpse's head. He brought the bat down over and over again, bits of brain and bone flying with every smash. Little Roxie smiled from the window. She watched it all happen. Her mother was behind her. "You learn so fast," Roxie whispered in her daughter's ear. "It's time to go." There was a scream and a yelp from across the street. Sydney Jones yanked her dog back by the leash. Jake turned toward her with a bloody grin on his face and tipped the bat toward her as if it were a hat. Jake wiped his brow with his forearm. His mouth was parched. He'd go inside so little Roxie and her mother could see what he did for them. They weren't there. He looked through the house and stopped when he saw the note on the kitchen table. "Thank you for killing Billy and his daddy, the Roxies." Then the wail of sirens came. Jake set the bat on the kitchen table and went to the porch steps. He waited for the police. Jake knew he'd never see them again. They were worse than mermaids in the legends of pirates, and they were much more than mortal. But they needed men to breed. How many Roxies were in the world? Jake wondered. Beautiful creatures that convinced men to do their evil bidding before disappearing in a veil of mystery. Jake raised his hands as the officers stepped from the cruiser. There would be no trace of DNA evidence suggesting that anyone else was in the home. Just the handwritten note tying Jake to the killing of the younger Kuto with his bloody prints. Thunder doesn't only happen when it's raining. Thunder can come from anywhere. Thunder can have any name. The name of Jake's thunder was Roxie, and he was certain he wasn't the only one. Party in the Woods by Joe Salmo. Tristan and Becca made their way down the wooded path behind Tristan's neighbor's farm. Josh and Emily went to bed pretty early, so for years, Tristan had brought friends down here behind the farm to explore the woods. As he got older, he explored less and came to the woods to drink and party with the girls from town. Becca was new to town, just moving here a month ago. Tristan was infatuated as soon as he saw her in the hall in school, her long brown hair flowing behind her. He followed her after school, trying to come up with something to say to her to spark a conversation. It paid off, though, he thought, as he sneaked a glance at her behind the moonlight through a break in the trees. She carried a bottle of Jack Daniels in her right hand. It was already missing a quarter of the brown liquid inside. She was more of a drinker than he was, he noted, with a smile. He couldn't keep his eyes off of the way she walked, the curves swaying back and forth. It was mesmerizing. The swaying stopped in front of him. "Tristan, did you hear that?" she whispered to him. Hear what? He asked at a normal volume. Shh! Something in the woods, she replied. Do you guys have bears around here? She asked with a little bit of fright in her voice. I didn't hear anything. Don't worry, I've been coming here since I was a kid. There's nothing out here that can hurt us, he said and smiled, that famous smile that got him the girl on numerous occasions. Becca still stood there for a moment. When she didn't hear anything, she began to walk the path again, but cautiously. Tristan snuck up behind her and grabbed the bottle from her hands. She let out a scared yelp as he laughed at her. He took a big gulp off the bottle, letting the alcohol burn his throat. Are the others meeting us up here? Becca asked. She wouldn't agree to coming out to the woods with a guy she'd just met unless others were going to be there. He scrambled to find another couple to come along. Yeah, it's not much farther now. We got a little fireplace from an old house, Tristan said. It must have been from the 1700s, he said. Sounds cool, Becca said. Thinking of the fireplace, Tristan frowned. He should be able to see it from here. He knew Greg and Beth were already there. He saw Greg's car down by the side of the highway on the way over. Maybe he was just lazy, he thought. The moon was hidden by the boughs of the trees above. Tristan made his way in the dark to where he knew the stone chimney was. He could barely see the lighter stone in the darkness. He felt around to the right where he stacked the kindling. It felt wet, but he didn't remember it raining recently. Greg, if you pissed on our wood, I will kill you, he called out to the night. He hoped Greg heard him as he banged Beth or whatever they were doing. He grabbed a book of matches from his pocket after stacking the wooden branches into a small teepee shape with pine needles and last fall's leaves underneath. I can't see anything, Becca said from behind him. 1 second, he said, masking his disappointment. She was one hell of a looker, but she seemed kind of annoying to him. He struck the match, which blinded him for a second with its brightness in the almost complete dark. He instinctively moved the match to the pine needles under the wood before it burned out, or the wind got it. He saw spots in his vision as he gently blew on the pine needles. Yes, he called out as the fire came to life. It wasn't piss on the sticks. It was a darker, thicker color. It reminded him of the bottle Becca carried. Hey, babe, can I get a drink? He said, getting to his feet. The sticks were catching now, and the light from the chimney was spreading. Becca didn't answer him. Babe? He said, and turned around. Becca was standing in front of him, 10 feet away with the bottle still in her right hand, her widened eyes staring past him towards the chimney. What the hell's gotten into you? He said and took a step closer. But she didn't move. He watched as the bottle slipped from her hand and struck the ground, spilling its contents. What's wrong with you? He said, grabbing the bottle off the ground to save its contents, which he tried to pour down his throat. He stopped with the bottle to his lips. Becca still hadn't moved. He started to get a creepy feeling and turned towards the fire. The light from the flames illuminated the immediate area. The stack of wood he had piled there yesterday was definitely wet, but it was also red. It looks like something bled all over it. His eyes fell to just in front of the stack of wood, and he saw the source of the blood. Greg, naked to the waist, lay on the ground, twisted in a way Tristan could only describe as wrong. His face looked behind him, and several vertebrae stuck out from a gaping hole in his neck. His eyes were wide open, in fear, similar to Becca's. He turned towards his would-be girlfriend, but she was still looking in the same direction. Tears streaked her cheeks, and a sob escaped her lips. He turned back to see what she was looking at. And that's when he noticed Beth.
Did you hear that? Better check the locks on your doors. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Blonde hair mixed with crimson blood covered her young face from the caved-in skull before it sunk into the opening that her missing lower jaw left behind. She was completely naked behind the woodpile. Tristan approached her body, carefully. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. She had large scratches, or claw marks, crisscrossing across her naked breasts at an inch deep, filled with rivers of blood. One of her legs was missing. Just missing. How does that even happen? He couldn't see it anywhere. But he did find her lower jaw. It looked like some sick bastard tried to rape her with it, but all it did was tear her pubic area. Teeth peeked out from between strings of her mangled genitalia that hung from her body like the streamers on a 5-year-old girl's bicycle. Panic started to settle into Tristan. He stepped backwards away from the mangled corpses of his high school friends. "Becca," he called out. "Run." He turned himself to run and saw a horrid sight. Behind Becca, who still hadn't moved from the same position, stood 3 humanoid shapes. Their eyes reflected the firelight from the chimney. "Becca?" Tristan managed to say before the creatures moved. In an instant, 2 grabbed his date and held her arms behind her back. He heard a sickening pop as one of her shoulders were dislocated violently. The pain seemed to break Becca out of her shock. She screamed. The 3rd creature charged Tristan. He managed to land a punch on the monster, but it didn't seem to have any effect. It grabbed him and forced him to his knees, placing one of its large clawed feet on the back of his legs so he couldn't get up. "Help me, Tristan!" Becca called out. It was her last words. One of the creature's hands suddenly protruded from her lower abdomen, tearing out of her flesh with a violence Tristan had never witnessed before. "No!" He called out in horror and began to sob. He swore the creature holding him mocked his cry. Tristan saw the moment Becca died. He could see it in her eyes. The moment it ceased to be Becca and became only a sack of meat. It was worse than the mangled corpses of his friends, watching her die like that. Becca's body fell down to the ground. The 2 monsters fought over her, tearing pieces of her flesh off in front of him. The same flesh he was admiring just a short time ago. Tristan couldn't take it anymore. He put his head down, letting his hair cover his eyes, but the creature holding him reached down with its gray hand and pulled his hair until once again he was facing Becca. Not only did they seem to enjoy killing, but it seemed they enjoyed making him watch. He cried out. When the 2 creatures finished dividing up Becca, they began to eat. Tristan struggled, but the creature's strength was too much for him. He clenched his eyes closed to block out the horror in front of him, but the creature seemed to know. It dug a dull nail into the back of his neck every time he closed his eyes, only letting the pressure off when he opened them again. Closed or opened, he was being tortured. He kept them closed as long as he could take the nail digging him, never in the exact same space, then opened them until the pain from the nail was replaced with the evisceration of his date. It seemed to go on forever. He couldn't take any more. He tried to move again, but the 3rd creature that held him did so diligently. "Go on. Get a bite," Tristan called out to his captor. It was the only thing he could do, mocking his torturers. He had no way to track time, but at least 15 minutes passed as he watched his date disappear, piece by piece, down the gullets of these hellish creatures. He couldn't take any more and closed his eyes to escape, but his ears picked up on the wet, snapping of teeth through flesh and bone. It reminded him of tearing the wings off of a chicken for dinner, and it made him want to throw up. The creature holding him down pushed him all the way to the ground. He opened his eyes and looked at what was left of Becca. At that point, he did throw up, but it had nowhere to go, being forced down to the ground. He breathed in his own vomit and thought he was going to drown. The creature yanked him back up to his knees as the other 2 approached. He was pulled all the way to his feet, and with a last act of defiance, he kicked the groin of the creature right in front of him. It stepped back from the impact, then reached out with its gray-skinned hand and grabbed his chest, tearing cloth and flesh away from his body. He screamed. The pain was intense. "Just fucking kill me already!" he yelled out, just wanting it done. He couldn't take any more. "Do it, you cocksucker!" The monsters didn't heed him. One of them grabbed his hand and held it out. The first creature, that had been holding him the whole time, switched places with the one that tore a piece out of his chest. It looked him in the eye, with an evil intelligence behind its gaze as it slowly and deliberately raised his hand to its mouth and bit off his thumb. He screamed out into the night. He held on to a slim hope that Josh or Emily might hear him in the quiet country night. They had just had a newborn, so maybe they would be awake feeding it, he thought. The creature bit off his middle finger and smiled, Tristan's blood and flesh still sitting in its gaping maw. Its body shook with small convulsions, with a grunting sound. A shiver shot up Tristan's back as he realized it was laughing at his misery.
Till Death Do Us Part by Rob Fields. 14 months ago. Ain't a church supposed to be a safe, sacred place? Ain't all churches considered the house of God? Y'all wouldn't have known that if you was at the Strickfield Community Church. It was Saturday afternoon and my best friend was supposed to be marrying her fella. You'd have thought it'd be a happy scene. The guests invited filled many of the pews there. You would have seen the minister herself, Delphine Brewster Sloan, conducting the wedding between my girl, Whitney Mirren, and her fella, her high school sweetheart. But you see, I know what Whitney knows. The fella ain't been faithful to Whitney. In fact, I done seen her cheating. Twice. With different women. First time was with Whitney's mama. And a couple days ago, her fella was putting the screws to a stripper at his bachelor party. Whitney's fella knew I knew about him and Whitney's mama and swore up and down he'd kill me if I done told her. But that's just it. I told Whitney. She ain't none believed me about her mama, but she done saw what I saw with that stripper. Whitney was fuming to kill her fella right then and there. Honestly, I would have thought she would have ended the wedding. But the wedding happened, and everything started off like you'd expect a wedding to start. Then, it happened. Whitney suddenly turned and faced everybody. But y'all wouldn't recognize her. When I saw her, I done peed myself. Whitney was a ghost bride right out of some horror flick. Her eyes glowed red and her skin was like shining marble. She done completely looked like some other girl. Suddenly, Whitney pointed past the crowd. I swear y'all could have heard every door in here locking fast. Minister Brewster Sloan shrieked and stepped away from the couple. "Almighty God in heaven!" she choked out. Whitney turned to her. "God doesn't exist here," she laughed coldly. "Or he would have appeared when you asked if there was a reason why my groom and I shouldn't be married." Whitney's suddenly pointing right at her fella while holding her bridal bouquet, which looks more like black roses now instead of the red ones originally. "You cheating bastard," she accused him. "Why did you even keep our wedding today when you don't even love me?" She screams now, making him fly out into the crowd. Then she drops the bouquet. "You betrayed me, lover. But we'll have one hell of an event here today." When that Whitney thing went out into the crowd, the guests ran to the doors. I knew deep down they wouldn't budge none. When I tried running, Whitney was suddenly right there. "I know you tried telling me about his cheating, and I wouldn't listen. But you still get to be my maid of honor." Whitney turned and went to her fella. Boy, was he ever begging and pleading for Whitney to let him live. Whitney smiled at him. "I'll spare your life if you can show that you're faithful to whomever you truly do give your black heart to." She raised her finger. "But be warned. If I see you're still unfaithful, then I'll return for you on your wedding day." Whitney turned her attention to the crowd and laughed insanely as she went and painted the church with the blood from the guests. I peed myself again at the horror I was seeing. I was a mess when Whitney returned to me, her once beautiful bridal gown now all wet and red itself. Whitney's mouth was full of blood. Then she licked her fingers like she'd done finished a good helping of ribs on Memorial Day. "I know you tried to tell me about Mom, Oh, but I just ate her black heart. She smiled a toothy smile. Don't worry, Ariane. You and the minister get to live.
If you're not afraid, then you're already dead. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Next thing I knew, Whitney picked up her bouquet of black roses. Then I remembered where she got them from. Whitney's mama found them for her at a stand at Jamie's flea market near the village limits on the west side. There was this booth set up called Tinker's. The man there was selling odd junk, but he also had this bridal bouquet in his refrigerator off to the side and made her an offer she couldn't refuse. Whitney's mama was such a cheapskate, even with Whitney. Whitney smiled now, almost forgot the most important part. Whitney shoved the bouquet of black roses into my arms. I hissed when my fingers got cut by them thorns. I was bleeding on the flowers now. Soon they all turned red again, as before. Whitney pointed at me. You're getting married next, girl. She lowered her hand. Hopefully you'll find a man that'll worship the ground you walk on, because I sure didn't. She turned to her fella. Remember, if you're unfaithful to your next bride, I'll return for you and claim your soul. Then Whitney laughed this horrible laughter as she suddenly caught fire and started burning. The minister and I escaped the church as it caught fire and burned to the ground. I didn't know about the minister, but I knew I'd never forget that day, as long as I lived. The present. I'd taken that next big step with my fellow once I'd finally taken a long shower and had a few too many nightmares about Whitney Mirren's wedding. Lance Westerhold and I had been seeing each other off and on for a long time. I couldn't tell you why we kept getting back together and backing off each other. I couldn't even tell you how many times we fucked again and again. I admit without reservations, I ain't pretty and ain't no prize to catch. I know for a fact Lance has fucked other girls who could have been sex stars. Lance could have done way better than me. I even joke about being beaten with an ugly stick by my mama many times. I never understood to this day why guys think I'm some kind of prize. Getting back to Lance, I was just leaving Woody's drive-in after finishing my open to close. Yeah, I was a car hop who served people on roller skates. What's really fucked up, I actually loved working there. Yeah, y'all heard me. I loved being on my skates all day. Pay ain't for shit, but I get me some damn good tips. I was walking home to my trailer when Lance pulled up beside me in his Dodge Charger. Now you talking about a complete mismatch here. Lance was one of them handsome, muscular mechanics you'd see in an older romance movie. I was just a scrawny, ugly thing. He had that nice car and I had my roller skates. He lived in a small house. I was just trailer trash. Lance was the kind of guy who knew what he wanted and went and got it. I was the kind of girl who accepted her lot in life and lived with it. Let me alone, Lance, God damn it, I yelled. I ain't in no mood for your shit today. We was out on Township Road 113, not far from my trailer. In other words, nobody was coming or going when Lance stopped me and started working his charms on me again. He started telling me I was the only woman for him. I told him he was so full of shit it was coming out his brown eyes. When I told him to fuck off again, he finally got out of his car and came to me. Then the fucker grabbed me and crushed me against him as he gagged me with his big tongue. Next thing I knew, he got my shorts off and was banging me in the back seat. Like I said, he had all them other hot pieces of ass he could be having whenever he wanted, and the dumb fuck kept coming right back to me. One more time, I am an ugly ass fucking girl. And no, Lance ain't been drinking, 'cause I'd have tasted it when he was sucking tongue with me. Also, Lance ain't my first, but I was definitely his. It was at Strickfield High when Lance saw me and Tammy Lesher at a football game. My girl and I were smoking a bowl together when Lance approached us. Now, Tammy was one of them hot girls Lance could have had whenever he wanted, but he couldn't keep his eyes off of me. When Tammy went back to the game, Lance grabbed a hold of me and took me where no nosy Parker could see us. I kept insisting Tammy could have given him a much better time than me, but he stripped me naked and gave me his cherry. I ain't telling you how I knew I was his first, but believe me when I say, I knew. Like I said, we've been off and on, in and out of bed together, in and out of relationships, and now we was in the back seat of his car. I never saw it coming. After he'd fucked me twice, he'd said it right to my very lips. Marry me, Ariane. Nothing much surprised me after Whitney's wedding, except that. The fuck you say? Marry me, Ariane, he repeated. We looked at each other for the longest time, then I scoffed. Fuck you. Marry me, Ariane, he whispered to my lips one more time. We looked at each other for the longest time again. Then I told him the closest thing to a yes he was going to get. Fuck you, I muttered. Then he fucked me a couple more times in his back seat to make our engagement official. Anyway, that's how I keep remembering it as I'm getting out of bed and leaving Lance sleeping. I go into the bathroom and look in the mirror. My ugly ass face was staring right back at me. At first, I was going to laugh for even dreaming Lance asked me to marry him till I'm feeling the weight on my left hand and raise it to see the big glowing rock he put on my finger. I come back out and look at Lance as he keeps snoring away. Now, unlike Whitney, I know exactly what to expect from my fella. Yeah, I know goddamn well he's gonna keep fucking other women, like I'm gonna keep fucking other fellas. And we're getting married? The rock on my finger says we are. Okay, knowing what I know about Lance, all I'm wondering is, why? I ain't rich. Like I said, I'm a car hop at an old-time drive-in. I own this trailer in the land it rests on that my folks left me outright, and it's my only lot in life. Only thing I'm thinking is I gotta be one hell of a hot fuck. I shake my head and keep wondering how I keep getting laid when fellas shouldn't want to touch me with a 10-foot pole. And then I see that fucking bouquet of flowers Whitney Mirren gave me at that wedding from hell all them months ago. Yeah, it's been months, and them flowers, they're still looking like I just picked them up at the flower shop. They're still red as the blood I bled on them that day. I went and picked up the bouquet, then I shook my head slowly. Fuck you. I took them fucking flowers outside, not giving two shits who'd drive by and see me naked. I tossed them into the fire pit I burned shit in. After soaking them down good in gasoline and lighting them up, I'm amazed yet again. Not only am I getting married, them flowers from hell ain't even burning up, even after making the flames go real high. Then the fire finally goes out. Them flowers are still there. I reach into the pit and pull them out. They ain't even warm. Next thing I knew, Lance is out here with me. He cradled me into him from behind so we can swap spit and morning breath in a kiss. The day of the wedding is finally here. It definitely wouldn't be a very big one, but there was enough people on both my side and his that came. Believe it or not, Lance's parents paid for our wedding. Now, I know for a fact Lance's parents ain't never liked me none too much. I even heard his daddy telling him he could do so much better than me. Hell, I even told Lance he could do way better than me. All the dumbass says back to me is, I love you, Ariane, and I'm marrying you. Keep in mind, I ain't never said I loved him, but I think he knew I'd stay with him when I'd let him fuck me 6 ways from Sunday, even after I knew he'd just fucked another woman, or when I'd show up walking funny in his place. Yet, he still wants to marry me. Well, fuck it then. Getting back to the wedding, we was wearing normal dress clothes, fuck being all formal and everything. Lance comes and looks at me before the wedding. Forget he ain't supposed to see the bride before the wedding, right? We're alone with each other now. You just know we're gonna be miserable together, right? I tell him. You can do so much better than me. Last chance to tell me to fuck off. I promise you no hard feelings. He just pulls me into his arms and stares deep into my eyes. I love you. I laugh a little. And you're off your fucking rocker leaving that rich girl all to her own at your wedding rehearsal. Not just a rich girl, a Mirren. You do know Mirrens are rich as fuck, right? Yet your dumb ass done stood her up when you came to my trailer and fucked me. We stare at each other again. Then he kisses me one more time before leaving me before our wedding. Suddenly that fucking bouquet of flowers is right there on the table. I take them in my hands and hold them in front of me. The bloody red flowers turn deathly black. Funny thing, not only have I continued having nightmares about Whitney's wedding, but I keep having nightmares about some of her last moments before the wedding. I'd swear I was looking right through her own eyes. That rich girl found herself a fella whom thought the world of her the way she did him. Her girls she went to Strickfield High with kept telling her he wasn't no good for her. She wouldn't listen. I saw everything, like I was Whitney Mirren herself. She gave this man her everything. She gave him her heart. She gave him her body. However he wanted to do her, she thought she did everything right. Then the wedding came and Whitney got this very bouquet. Whitney's mom especially ordered him just for her from a man named Isley Tinker. Turned out he was doing flowers on the side of selling odds and ends at a junk shop. When Whitney got the flowers, her fingers got pricked by the thorns. Same when Whitney put them in my hands. After Whitney bled all over him, she learned the truth about her fella. He was never once loyal to her. Whitney's fella fucked around on her again and again. The more she saw, the more she burned, hot as hell.
You're not safe yet. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
And at the Strickfield Community Church, where the wedding was to take place, Whitney turned into a bride from hell and slaughtered everyone in that particular church, including the church people themselves, save Minister Brewster Sloan. Remember when I said I know everything there is to know about Lance? You see, Lance was the fella fucking around on Whitney Mirren over a year ago. I knew damn well he was going to marry her. I even agreed to be Whitney's maid of honor. But goddamn if Lance wouldn't stop fucking me anyways. Only reason Whitney didn't kill his ass that day was because he begged her for his life, promising he'd be a better man. She said she'd hold him to it. Now that fucking music's playing for me to make my entrance, everybody's gasping at me now. No, not 'cause I'm one ugly fucking girl about to marry Lance Westerhold. It's because I became Whitney Mirren herself now. I'm the same ghostly bride Whitney became, all because of having them fucking flowers. The doors are all locked tight, and I'm seeing the look on Lance's face. He wants to run as our relatives are exploding all over the place and painting the Strickfield Chapel the unholy red wedding it needs to be. Lance is looking at me now, knowing he fucked up royally. In fact, it's only him, the preacher man, and me now. Lance don't even try running away. I'm ready, I tell the preacher man in Whitney Mirren's disembodied voice. The preacher man stammers through the usual wedding lines with Lance. Lance is looking like he's ready to piss himself. But he looks at me and says, I do. Now the preacher man stammers the same lines to me, except he calls me Whitney Mirren, since that's who I am now. When he finishes, the preacher man and Lance wait my answer. I look at Lance with my glowing eyes and smile sweetly. Till death do us part. And then I drop my cursed bouquet to pull Lance to me and seal our unholy union with a kiss. Then the preacher man watches us burst into flames as I'm taking Lance straight to hell with me. First Date by Rob Fields. Perspective, Ariel Mirren. Who would have thought that my life would have changed so drastically over the holidays? I'm pretty good at keeping my feelings to myself, But I'm still very angry and upset with my parents. Mostly Mom. I still can't believe that witch offered me to Queen Arcadia in exchange for her fame and fortune. Oh, let me tell you, I was so angry with Mom that I screamed and threw everything at her that I could get my hands on. I mean, I destroyed a lot of stuff. My friends who were there with me had to pull me off Mom when I finally attacked her myself. I've had sufficient time now to calm down and assess my current situation. I'm living with Madeline Donnerly and her family now, and actually have my own room. Mouse's parents converted a spare bedroom just for me. Not only that, I figured that upon returning to Strickfield Junior High, that people would be jeering me about the whole fall from grace thing. No one said a word. In fact, I continued on as if that whole blow-up between Mom and I had never happened. But something did happen at school today. You probably know by now that Carter Cross and I have always been polar opposites. Even now, he still calls me Princess. But he's not making fun of me because of my fall from grace. I wasn't letting him off so fast, though. I still managed to swipe a few of his sodas, including at lunch period today. Today, though, it didn't feel right. Normally, Carter's on me the minute I swipe a soda. In fact, we both had the can, ready to fight for it. Then, he just let me have it. The truth is, I haven't forgotten that he asked me out the first weekend of December, when we were trapped in the Strickfield Town Center Mall overnight, hanging Christmas decorations for Cousin Harmony. I can't stop replaying that event in my mind over and over. Carter hasn't asked me out again since, though. However, I haven't really given him an answer. Then I remember that Carter Cross actually lives next door to me now. I go to my smartphone and text Carter to see if he's home. I get a reply back almost immediately. Yes. I get off my bed and head downstairs to go to his house. He's right there at the back door and invites me in. "What's up, Princess?" he asks. I take a deep breath and look at him. "Yes, Carter. I'm sorry I never answered you that night, but yes, I will go out with you." Carter and I stare at each other for a long moment. "You sure?" he asks quietly. I nod quickly. We need to know for sure if there's really something there between us. We can know for sure in one date, right? We stare at each other again. What do we do?" he stammers. "I ain't never been on a date before." "Me neither," I admit. "I guess we can just go hang out together, right?" Carter nods. "Okay, yeah. What time do you want to go?" Perspective. Carter Cross. Madeline Donnerly and me are playing video games at Roth's Rings. After losing a third straight game of Cruisin' USA, placing nearly last, Madeline looks at me. "Let's go talk, buddy," she says in her mousy voice. We grab our drinks and head outside. Then I just tell her, "Ariel and me are going on a date tonight." Her eyes are really wide now. "Really?" I tell Madeline about when I asked Ariel out at the mall during that overnight last month. I just kept thinking about it. You've been giving me a hard time about Ariel. I know Mona and Bailey give Ariel a hard time too. Ariel said we gotta know if there's something there, so we're gonna do one date. Tonight. Now it's the same silence like at my place when Ariel and I agreed to go out. Madeline breaks the silence. "Told you liked her, buddy." I sigh. "What if I mess things up with her, Madeline? This is our first date. It ain't gonna be like when we hang out." She smirks. "Just talk to her, Carter. The rest'll work itself out. I ain't never dated yet, but I understand a few things. Based on movies." She gently slaps my shoulder. "Just talk to her." I nod quickly. "Sorry about what happened in here. I should have just talked to you." "It's all good, buddy," she replies. I put my hand on her shoulder. I'm glad I can always talk to you, Madeline. And you always will, she promises me. Feeling better, we go back inside and start playing again. Now I can actually compete with Madeline when we start racing again. Perspective, Ariel Mirren. I enter Mouse's house, she calls it the mouse hole, and see she's typing away on her computer. A few minutes later, she's finally done. I think she finished a paper for one of our classes. Now she looks right at me. It's gonna be okay, Ariel, she tells me. I sigh. Carter talked to you, didn't he? She turns in her chair and waits for me to sit on her lower bunk. He did, but you kind of been fidgeting all day. You only ever do that when you're really nervous, which don't happen often with you. I sigh again. I hate you, Mouse. She comes and sits beside me. It'll be okay. You and Carter are gonna hang out. Just have fun and talk to him. Suddenly, the doorbell rings.
Don't go away. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
It's Carter, Mouse tells me. I give her an odd look. Carter usually just comes in. Mouse smirks. Yeah, Carter and me usually walk into each other's houses, but Carter ain't here to hang out with me. He's here for you. Better go answer that. I look at the Freddy Krueger clock next to the door. 7:30. Time sure flew since Carter and I arranged our date. I see Mouse's smile and know everything's going to be all right. I get up and make my way down to the front door. Mouse is right when Carter's standing outside. We look at each other for a long moment, just like at his house earlier. Then I finally put on my jacket and go out onto the porch with him, closing the door behind me. We're officially on our first date now. Perspective, Carter Cross. Ariel and me are both pretty nervous. We're walking to downtown Village together in silence, glancing at each other at times. Finally, Ariel says something. I'm just as scared as you, Carter. That makes me feel better. What do you want to do? We stop right outside the Strickfield Centennial Theater. There's only 2 movies playing, including a special screening of Rad. Yeah, that bicycle movie from the 1980s. Ariel surprises me and wants to see it. I pay for our tickets and buy us both Cokes. Madeline and I had seen this movie plenty of times after we became friends. Rad got us into riding bikes the way we do, even getting mongooses. Anyway, Ariel never got bored once. Later, we're sitting in Big Ed's soda parlor after the movie and talking about it. Madeline's right about just talking to Ariel. Also, Ariel insisted on paying for our Sundays since I paid at the movies. Suddenly, Ariel's eyes get wide. So do mine when Bailey Downs and Mona Abels approach our table. Ariel's face goes red fast, and not 'cause she's mad. Aw, ain't you too cute? Mona teases. Bailey just gives Ariel this weird smile. Now Ariel does toughen up. Yes, I am here with Carter Cross. Go tell the whole school. When Bailey and Mona look at me, I just nod Ariel's way. What she said. Then Mona and Bailey smile wickedly and giggle a little before they start singing. Ariel's got a boyfriend. Ariel's got a boyfriend. Ariel growls at them. I hate you both. Then they turn and walk away laughing. The last thing I hear before they leave is Bailey telling Mona, Told you so. Ariel takes a deep breath and looks at me now. I really don't care, Carter. I smile at Ariel. Me neither. When we finish our ice cream, we leave and go walking around. Then I decide to be a man and take Ariel's hand. She gasps at first, and then relaxes. She doesn't take her hand back. Then we get calm and start talking again. Perspective, Ariel Mirren. You just know Bailey and Mona are going to tell anyone who's willing to listen. I meant what I said. I really don't care who knows that I'm on a date with Carter Cross. I decide to be honest with him. Maybe if I was still living back in the gated community, I might have denied it, but I'm out here with all of you now. You ever miss being in there? Carter asks. No, I say without hesitation. My parents never once called Mouse's house asking for me. They never stopped by either. Not even anything in the mail. I smile a little. Madeline's parents are good people. I know. Suddenly, Carter and I just stop dead. How did we end up walking down this street, Carter? I ask. We just did, Carter tells me. We just turned down this way and, well, Carter and I are staring right at the old Carnavash estate from outside the high fence. When Carter and I squeeze hands, I admit something to him. Mona, Bailey, and I dared Mouse to go into this house when we walked by it in early October. Mona asked her if she was chicken. Mouse simply told us she was brave enough to go in there, but not stupid enough. We didn't say anything more to her about it after that. Okay, well, let's just keep walking, Carter suggests after a little bit. Yeah, let's, I agree fast. But neither of us move. It's not because we're both scared of the house, it's because we're looking through the main gate and seeing a little girl standing in one of the windows, looking right out at us. Perspective, Carter Cross. Ariel and I both agree we saw that little girl in the house. We're both pretty sure nobody lives in the Carnavash estate, and not for a very long time. Living in the village itself, it would be big news fast if anyone actually moved in there. When the little girl moves away from the window, Ariel and I look at each other. Carter, we can't leave that little girl in there, Ariel tells me. I gulp. I was afraid you'd say that. Ariel and me don't even gotta talk about it. We climb the fence and go inside the property. Looks like this place ain't had yard work done in years. Even though it's early January, weeds seem to keep growing real good here. When we reach the front door, one of them's wide open. Then I hear Ariel gulp. She's breathing fast and giving me looks. I know I gotta be looking scared too. Ariel and I are still holding hands when we slowly go inside. We ain't even 2 steps past the door when Ariel and me both cry out and turn around to see the doors are both completely closed. We go to them and find we're locked in. Ariel quickly pulls out her phone. No, she looks at me. No signal. You? Uh-huh, I confirm. Then I open my settings. No nearby Wi-Fi either. We put our phones away. Then Ariel points to the stairway. I don't think she was upstairs, Ariel, I say. I thought the little girl was in the room to the left of the doors. Ariel points in the direction. In there. Ariel quickly grabs my hand. Don't you dare let go. I'm not losing you, Carter Cross. I shake her hand to assure her I'm holding it. Then we walk into what looks like a living room. Little girl? I call out. Then I point to the window. There's where we saw her, right? We move to the window and look outside to see where we were before we came in. We'll have to keep looking around, Ariel says. She's not in here now. I stop her fast. Ariel! She turns and sees I'm pointing down a hallway where we see the little girl. Stop! Ariel calls out. Please, come this way! Ariel and I run down the hallway as she turns away. When we reach the end, we come into a conservatory. We move to the other entrance and go through it to see the little girl again at the end of another hallway. Carter! Ariel gasps. You seeing this? I nod fast. The little girl's feet are pointing to the floor, but it's plain as the noses on our faces. She's floating. Yeah, I definitely think she's a ghost, Ariel. I hate you, Carter, Ariel stutters. She really squeezes my hand now. Then we look down the hallway. I think she wants us to follow her, I say. It's like she's trying to tell us something. Ariel gulps again and turns me to look at the wall. There's an old Carnavash family portrait hanging there. Now we see the little girl at the very center, in front of her family. Clearly, she was the youngest. The date is January 4th, 1824.
I like it spooky. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Perspective, Ariel Mirren. That little Carnavash girl is over 200 years old. Had she lived, we look to see her ghost is still waiting for us. Come on, Carter, I stammer. The two of us keep following the little girl until we're at another door. No doubt this one's going to lead into the one place you would never want to go in a creepy old mansion like this. The basement. The door opens on its own, then the little girl floats down the stairway. She's giving off this eerie light to show she's at the bottom and waiting for us. Since she's lighting our way, we can easily follow her down without tripping over our own feet. Carter insists on leading the way, like the gallant guy I know he is. When we reach the bottom, the ghost moves again. The basement's still lit thanks to her. She takes us through a few rooms and finally stops next to a big brick wall. Then she points right at it. You want us to break? Carter mumbles. The little girl keeps pointing to the wall. Then I see something. Over there, Carter. Grab that big hammer. Carter and I let go of each other's hands. He finds the big sledgehammer on a workbench and brings it over. It takes Carter a few really big hits before he finally succeeds in cracking the mortar. He keeps swinging and hitting until he finally makes a block come loose. Then he keeps hitting it until it falls over on the inside. Carter has to take little breaks to collect himself, but he finally manages to break the wall in enough. I take out my smartphone and shine my light through the hole Carter made. Carter and I both scream when we see a couple of skeletons, one big and one small. And then the little girl smiles happily and points to both of us. Suddenly, this huge flash of light washes over us. Epilogue. Perspective, Ariel Mirren. Later that night, Carter and I are in the mouse hole, telling Mouse about our experience at the Carnavash estate. We told her about finding the little girl, and then her leading us to where she and her dad were both walled up in the basement. 200 years ago, today, a band of robbers came to the Carnavash estate and robbed it. Emilio Carnavash tried to save and protect his family from the robbers, but it was all in vain. Emilio and little Rosemary were walled up within the basement to cruelly separate the two of them from Margot, the mother, and Rosemary's two older brothers, Waldo and Morton. Emilio was badly hurt and weakened, and Rosemary was too little. Unable to free themselves from their tomb, they died of starvation. We weren't shown what happened to the rest of the Carnavash family. I can feel like deep down that both the father and the little girl are resting in peace now, I finish. Yeah, we got out of the house and went to Roth's Rings to call the police anonymously, Carter adds. Carter and I both pinky promised Mouse that we weren't making up the story. I believe you both, she said. Come on, we survived Abigail Tomlin, a big vampire woman, and Queen Arcadia, right? Good point, Madeline. Carter agrees. When we finish talking, Carter and I leave the house. We find ourselves holding hands again as we walk onto Carter's back porch. Carter and I both look like we want to say something to each other, but we just look at each other again. Carter leans in a little. He's hesitating. I'm hesitating. And then, I barely feel it when we come apart, but Carter and I shared our first kiss. We don't even have to say anything to each other, but we know mutually we're not going to be just one and done on dating. Carter and I say goodbye, and I watch him go into his house. I return to the Donnerly home and go back in. I head to my room and lay on my bed, knowing I have a lot to think about, and that's where this particular adventure ends. But I can promise you, we'll be back again very soon.
Well, my spooky lovers out there, I hope you enjoyed either experiencing some of our finest fare about fearful love, whether it was for the first time or as a much-needed revisit, because, absence does make the heart grow fonder. The longer a story's been away, the more it deserves a little revisiting. Or maybe, just maybe, I'm becoming a little sentimental in my old age. But thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy our brand new Valentine's Day story next Wednesday. If you want to hang out with us, if you're a part of that weekly spooky Lonely Hearts Club, just head over to Facebook and type in Weekly Spookies Tomb of Terror. Hang out with myself, our authors, and other spookies like yourself. Until next time, stay safe, stay spooky, and watch out for love.